Hey everybody, it's Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we are back with Rik Emmett. Rik, of course, from Triumph. Rik was on about 18 months ago. I think we had a really good conversation. Let me just read the cliff notes here, in case like you've been living under a rock and you don't know Rik, or COVID messed up your brain. Rik was a guitarist, vocalist, and primary songwriter for the great rock band Triumph. While Rik was with the band, Triumph released 7 platinum and 10 gold albums in Canada. In '88, Rik left Triumph to focus on a solo career and has since released 20 studio and live albums. He's back today because he just wrote a cool book of poems, man, like an autobiographical history, and I want to talk to him about that. Like I said, Rik was on here about 18 months ago. This is the only guy that 18 months later, he looks younger, man. I don't know what the deal. That's your next book.
But have you seen the videos that I have done for the poetry stuff? Have you gone and seen those on Facebook and stuff? I grew a COVID beard and I looked like Papa Smurf.
That I saw, yeah. And then you had like this Fu Manchu. You did like different stages of
yeah, when I was starting, my wife, you know, she finally said, like, look, you know, happy wife, happy life. and I'd asked, you know, on my fan forum and Facebook and stuff, should I shave? Should I not? You know, so then when I did it in stages. You know, so I started out and I took the sides off so that I would have the biker kind of goatee, you know, and then I took out the middle so that I would have the giant Fu Manchu and. Yeah, and my son, he immediately texts me back when that shit got posted up, and he goes, "Now this is what Instagram is supposed to be for, exactly this kind of thing." You know.
See, Dad, that's right. Yeah.
So,
anyway, you look great as always, man.
Thanks.
So in case you didn't, you guys listen, in case you didn't hear the initial interview I did with Rik, I'm going to attach the audio to that and the video to the YouTube of today's video, because it was a really nice conversation and we had a good time. Man, thanks for coming back. It's good to see you again, always.
I'm happy to be here and promoting my book.
I know. You're good about that, man. No, seriously, like you're a lot of musicians struggle with like promoting stuff.
Yeah, not me. I mean, you know, it goes with the territory, and my son just got married, and
congratulations.
Thank you, in Niagara Falls, and it was a great wedding. It was like storybook. But when he gets up to do his speech, now he was a broadcast journalist major in college. So he gets up and he goes, look, I know that, you know, on the internet, it tells you should really only talk for about 10 minutes. And says, but I want you to settle back because, you know, I like to talk and this is going to take 25 minutes. But I'm going to do this once in my life and I'm going to have fun with it. And it was a great speech. It was incredible, you know, and after it finished, I went to him, and he was a baseball player in college. Like he played Division I, NCAA. And I went to him and I said, you know what? You hit a home run. You touched all the bases. It was great. You know,
that's nice.
And it really was. But of course, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
That's what I'm thinking as you're talking. Yeah. All right. So I hope this is the only question I'll ask you that you're getting a lot. But the name of the book is Reinvention. What prompted you to write a book of poems in the first place?
Yeah. Okay. Well, how shall I start this in Craig Garber's? Okay. Let me say this first. Everyone loves guitar, right? So that's how we'll start with this. And the guitar for me has been the thing that led to all good things in my life. So, you know, let's get that out there, right? And there was a part of me where I was thinking, you know, in answering this kind of a question, maybe what I should do is actually get my guitar and demonstrate. And I know you're going to ask me questions that, you know, I've been asked a lot in the last little while. So if I actually grab my guitar at some point, you know, I think that'll help for your audience. But anyway, so
that's awesome.
Yeah, to answer the question, guitar led like right away to me principally being a writer in my life, even from when I was a kid. I started writing songs. And when you're writing songs, you're writing a type of poetry. Lyrics are a type of poetry. There's lots and lots of types of poetry. You know, as I've said to many people doing interviews, you start writing poetry, you're starting to dip your toe into the Pacific Ocean. Like there's a lot to learn. There's a
Yeah.
lot to know. There's a lot to it, and it's an art that's been around for an awfully long time, but you can go back to the Bible and you can find a poet, musician like David. Like he was both, and that's a fairly common thing. That if you're a songwriter, you're also a kind of a poet because there is a marriage there. And the other thing is that in the course of my music making as a guitar player, like there was a large part, you start out, you introduce me and you say, okay, this is what Rik used to be, and really that's the baggage I lug around all the time, like I'm the guy that used to be the guy,
Right.
wearing spandex pants and jumping around in a giant show that had flash pots and laser lights and, and then that's how people kind of think of me. They go, well, that's unusual that you would be a poet. But that guy and that thing, his guitar playing, like I was already doing stuff on records like Suitcase Blues on Just a Game and classical guitar pieces on records. And I had leanings that were way outside that pigeonhole, that shoebox, pick your metaphor, So, and as my life progressed, as you kindly said at the beginning, I made a lot of records after Triumph. And slowly but surely, I was kind of my commercial size of my thing was kind of shrinking, as I became more and more poetic in what it was, the music that I made, the guitar playing that I pursued. Like jazz guitar doesn't sell a lot of records, but it's a pretty high calling when it comes to guitar. It might even be higher than, pick your rock god, Yngwie Malmsteen, the guys that were important to me, Richie Blackmore, Steve Howe, like there's guitar playing that sort of seeks to go beyond that. And it's poetic in nature. But of course, poetry doesn't sell a lot of books either.
Absolutely.
So the big thing for me was going through this thing of, okay, so now I'm going to be a writer of poetry. Well, songs lead to, and then should it be a novel? Should I, what am I going to do? I've written guitar columns in magazines for years and years and years. I've done lots of writing. So I wasn't afraid of it, but it was a big creative challenge. And as you also said, autobiographical. A lot of it was kind of like digging around and going, okay, who am I and why am I? And that's because I'd retired. I'd retired from the road, and say you're kind of going through yet another stage of creative reinvention. And the poems just seemed like it was a fitting challenge. Like it was calling to me as much as I was going to maybe try and bang a square peg into a round hole, So, and why poetry? Because poetry gives you a little more license, a little more freedom than songwriting does. Because songwriting, you're trying to make something that somebody's going to get right away. They're going to hear it for the first time, and every second line is going to rhyme, and the phrasing is going to be. And once you've written one verse, now you've got to write the other verses to fit the same structure. Poetry gives you a little bit more of a kind of a creative license, creative freedom, but it's related to phrasing, lyrical kind of phrasing, like the shit that I knew I could apply in this new vocation that I was, pursuing. So it was a new thing to learn. It was a good creative challenge.
You just mentioned something. You said, I wanted to ask, who am I and why? Why did you want to ask that question, and why did you want to get the answer at this particular time in your life?
Well, you retire, and COVID came along. That changed the whole world. That I think everybody was kind of sitting around going, "There's my thumbs twiddling." What am I going to do? And so that was part of the who am I, what am I? But part of it too is, I'm a grandfather for the fourth time. That changes things. Here's other stuff. My fingers, I'm getting a little arthritis. They can't really do some of the things that I used to be able to do. Certainly my voice can't, like as you get older, my range. Songs that I used to do, and I've now come down a minor third and I D3 my guitar a half step, And I still can't really. So I'm down a fourth and I still can't really hit the high notes. And so you're kind of going, okay, so, I don't want to give up being creative. Like, that is my lifeblood. That's my juice. I got to have that. So that was when you're reinventing yourself, those are the questions you ask. Why am I who I am? And what am I going to do about it?
So I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you what the answer to that question is later on in the interview.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The book is organized under 7 different topics. First of all, congratulations, you did a good job on it, and it's well written, and we're not afraid to tackle some heavy stuff in there. So I give you, you gave 100% on that, man.
Yeah, I think, like when you start something like that, why are you going to be shy? Like there's no good reason for that. Like, and at my age and stage, why would I mean, there's certain punches I would pull. I would never want to cross a line where I betrayed confidences about my wife, for example, or with my wife. I wouldn't want to do things with my family,
Sure.
But other than that, all things are kind of fair. And I'll say this too: there's a famous old Canadian writer named Robertson Davies, and he died a long time ago. But he was like a professor that taught at the university, and he said that, and he was from a generation, maybe 2 generations before. He might have been the same age as my grandfather, kind of thing. But he said he didn't really feel the freedom to write everything he wanted to write until both of his parents had passed away. And that's an interesting dynamic because both of my parents have now passed away, and I wrote this book of poetry. And I do get a sense of, no, that gave me a certain kind of even more license than I might have had before. But I don't know. I mean, part of it too is you just get to a certain age and stage, and you're like, Tom Petty, damn the torpedoes.
Yeah, who gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
Do what you do. So the book is organized. You have 7 different topics or subjects. Explain maybe the autobiographical aspect of this with each of these sections. So let's start with the first one, which is called the Humanities.
Yeah. So, the humanities, if on a university level or college level, you're looking at things like religion and divinity schools. You're looking at psychology, sociology, and all of those kinds of things. So it became like, first of all, I should tell you, I had 2 beta readers, my cousin and a novelist who lives over in England, that are family friends. And they did some reading of the stuff in early stages and kind of got back to me and said, yeah, I'm not sure what you're driving at here. Like, what is it that you're trying to say? That's a good thing to have a beta reader get back to you. And you go, right, okay, I got to sharpen the focus here. But then part of the thing was also, if I organize this stuff under the section headings, and they're not chapters, they're just section headings.
Mm-hmm.
But if I organized it that way, you're giving somebody a clue going in as to what, neighborhood they're in, what ballpark they're playing in, So that was why I subdivided it. But the other thing was, we used to sit around the dinner table when my kids were growing up, and my son. There's a preface in the book called Recreational Therapy, which is one of the reasons why I was writing the book. So, why am I writing poetry? Because it's recreational therapy.
Right.
And my son used to say to me, we get into something about politics or religion or something, and I would be spewing and shooting off my mouth, and he would say, Dad, you should just write a book. Like, just write a book. Stop bothering us at the dinner table with your tangents and your soapbox, And so that was the 7 sections is religion, politics, Yeah. I guess you were going to go through them.
No. Is there?
But that's how it organized itself,
What is Ars Nova?
Ars Nova is like Yeah, there, the Ars Poetica there was a time period where that was something. It was kind of like arts, poetic arts, and it became a kind of a, like the new wave of music or the new wave of heavy metal, or So poetry's gone through all of these kinds of things too, and but Ars Nova is that's Latin for new art. So sometimes you write a poem and you're just writing it for the sake of it's poetry for poetry's sake. So that was the rubric there. It was new art,
When you speak, it's good to, I think I've studied advertising for many, many years. And there was a guy in the early 1900s named Claude Hopkins. And I only bring this up because his whole thing was, you need to speak to the common man. And I don't know what it is, but when you talk, you're very accessible to the common. We're both the common, everybody's the common man, I think it's interesting. I think it's really healthy for people to just the whole aspect of having this conversation with you. You're a major rock star, and like, I think people sometimes don't, they don't realize you go to the bathroom, you worry about your kids, you don't have a lot of time to spare, and it's really, you're very, like everybody else when you talk, man. So it's easy to relate to. I don't know why I wanted to say that, but it is.
Thank you. I mean, yeah. Part of my deal with ECW, the ECW Press, the publisher, is a 2-book deal.
Cool.
Poetry was one, the memoir was kind of, I think that's what landed me a deal.
Right.
Who would want to put out a book of poetry but to go back to that thing of rock star, one of the things that I've in my notes so far, in my computer as I'm typing up stuff for the memoir, I have this thing about I'm not a common rock star. I'm an extremely uncommon one, because I never really gave a shit about any of that.
Yeah, you're kind of anti-establishment, that establishment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't get into it because I wanted to be rich and famous. I really only got into it because I just wanted enough money that I could get married and have a family and do the things that the common guy does.
Right.
And so it was a job for me. It was a gig, and it was a great gig. I had been in a band before Triumph where I used to wear Alice Cooper makeup, and I had a costume that had a hand like a stuffed glove that grabbed my package, like it was between my legs. It was a white glove on a black, outfit. And so with a white strat, so I'm playing with this hand holding my package. And I was perfectly fine doing that because you're in a play.
Yeah.
You're a character in a play. And when you're a rock star, you're really just a character in a play, I'm hitting my marks, the lights are doing their thing, we've got cues and that's not to say that I didn't have a part of me that was like, man, I love music. I love playing guitar. And I really did. And I was, I'm not gonna try and sound too egotistical here, but I was pretty fucking good at it.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I could really play. And so I could really make, I believed what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so it had an authenticity to it, which made everybody believe, oh, this is what he is. This one-dimensional cartoon thing that I'm seeing, this is what this guy is. But I mean, imagine what it's like if you're a TV actor and you end up in a sitcom and you're playing some guy who, he's can't remember what it was called now, Married with Children or something, and he stuffs his hand down his pants and he's sitting on the thing, and he's going to be typecast. It's going to be really hard to break out. Now, that guy, to his credit, he became the guy in Modern Family, right? So, he was in a movie called French Connection, where he played a detective who was a prick, and he was really good at it. And so I go,
he was in the French Connection.
And I think he did Shakespeare when he was younger too, that guy.
Interesting.
So Ed somebody.
Yeah, Ed, right.
Yeah. So anyways, the point is, you get known for what it is that makes you famous, but rich and famous it's not necessarily all that it's cracked up to be. It also has some stuff about it. And, you know, you and I were chit-chatting before, and you're going, yeah, white guy problems. There's a thing where there's a real truth to that, where what's the point of bitching and moaning that you became rich and famous? Like, when you're writing a memoir, what's the point of so you kind of have to leaven that with the idea of, you know, look, it's been a life of privilege. It's been a life of incredibly good luck. So that's part of what's feeding the memoir, and it feeds the poetry a little bit too. That, you know, yeah. So blah blah blah.
No, so somebody came on my show once, and they put it really well. They said, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And I think you do a great job of that, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I want to talk about some of the poems, because I read a bunch of them, and some of them are pretty deep. You have one called Born to Pay, which is on page 26. If any of you boys and girls are following along. And it sounds like you're okay with dealing with your mortality in that one.
I am. Well, you know, from time
I know.
from
I
time
am, but
to
shit,
time,
I'm not rushing to die, but yeah, I am.
you know, I'm not in any big hurry.
Yeah,
but I'm coming. I think, you know, living well, the best revenge.
Yes,
you know,
man.
Living well is also a part and parcel with coming to terms with aging, with getting older. You know, so Born to Pay is about, you know, this guy that used to be a rock star that has all of this baggage, you know, all of this stuff where people look at you and they go, "Ooh, Rick, what happened to? Where's all your hair? Hey, Rick, what happened to your spandex
Dude,
pants?"
I should have all your hair. Trust me, please.
Yeah. No, but I mean, you know, I used to have it halfway down my back. You know, and that's that whole thing of, you know, people seeing you as a two-dimensional kind of figure, but in your own life, looking at yourself, looking in the mirror, you have to try and see all the dimensions. And as you're getting older, you have to come to terms with that. So, you know, the metaphor of that, and that's a lyric. That's not really a poem. That's a lyric. And as I was writing it, I realized this is a lyric. It's turning itself into a lyric. I'm not going to fight City Hall. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to write some chord changes in the melody, and I'll add it, because I was thinking, you know, I'm always kind of a couple of steps ahead. I'm going, well, there's going to be an audiobook. I can put a couple of songs on the audiobook. That'll make some of my fans want, you know, because a couple of songs, you know, some little guitar to get you from one section to another. That'll make the audiobook really hip and cool and nice.
Yeah.
And so, you know, let's do that. So creatively, that's what Born to Pay became. But I'll tell you this, and in 1963, somebody bought me the Bob Dylan album that was, I think it was maybe called Another Side of Bob Dylan or something like that. And it was literally, he just went into the studio in New York, you know, got an acoustic guitar, stood in front of two microphones, one for his vocal and one for his guitar, played his songs, and they put out an album. And that's what it was. And I kind of had come all the way back around full circle, and I was kind of going, well, that's what I'm going to maybe do. I'm going to start trying to do some of that. So I had a bunch of stuff on my website that was called, you know, Folk Songs for the Farewell Bonfire, which we just, you know, eventually just called it the Bonfire Session. And they were really just as simple as you can get. And I think the writing of poetry came out of that, where it was like, I can get even simpler. I can distill even more, you know. So there was definitely a kind of an impetus to that, and that's partly because I'm getting older, and so it's more about what can I do sitting in a chair at a desk, as opposed to, you know, getting a fucking work visa so that I can get in an airplane, so that I can go to some city, so that I can get in a taxi cab, so that I can go to a hotel, so that I can go to a, you know, like. That guy is finished.
Yeah.
You know, that guy's gone. So what are the dues I'm going to pay now? You know, so Born to Pay was kind of about that.
What's the toughest part for you of getting older? For you to like accept, I don't know if accept, but, or that, Yeah. What's the toughest part of aging for you to accept?
I think the physical changes of it, aches and pains, and that stuff doesn't work. When I was a teenager, I was hell bent to be an athlete,
Yeah.
and I played football for 5 years in high school. And when I say 5 years,
Explain.
I spent
That was my next question.
I spent extra time in my senior year because I went back because my knee had been so badly injured in my senior year. I wanted another crack at it. So I went back, and in the first practices in the fall of that second senior year, my knee wouldn't hold up. And I had to face the reality of I'm no longer going to be I was an elite athlete. I ran track. I played every sport there was: volleyball, basketball, football. I played soccer when I was younger. But now I'm paying the price for all of the bones that got broken and all of the things that happened, all the ligaments that got torn and cartilage that had to get surgically removed. And so there's all of that. And I can remember once I was getting some X-rays on my back. And I was saying, oh man, and they make you had to stand up in this thing, and the nurse goes behind a screen because you're wearing a lead vest while they're doing, and you're thinking, this can't be good for me. Like, why is she going and hiding?
Right.
Clearly this can't be good for her. And so she comes back, and I was kind of kvetching and going like, yeah, I should have never played all those sports in high school. And she looked at me, and she had like a look of disgust on her face. And she goes, if you could go back, and no one can go back, that. No one can go back. But if you could, you'd make exactly the same mistakes again. I go, she's right, of course.
Yeah.
If I went back now and I could talk to my younger self wouldn't listen to my older self. They'd go like, fuck off, old man.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. I know everything, so.
That ain't that the truth.
Yeah.
Genders, you got something there on page 35, a poem called Genders, Strangers, Foreigners, Lovers. And you had a line in there. It says, after all, we are so often strangers to ourselves. And I was curious, what made you say that?
Okay. Good question.
Thanks.
That the part of the process of writing poetry, I find, is that there's an awfully long path, a long road to get to where you want. And I used to use this metaphor when I was teaching songwriting, that there's this giant field of grain, okay? And eventually someday it's going to be a bottle of 12-year-old scotch. So there's going to be this distillation process that occurs over a period of time. Okay, so I started out on this journey towards foreigners, strangers to ourselves, where I was angry at the fact that I was a white male settler. And I was taking the shiv for it from all kinds of special interest groups that speak with loud voices, minorities that, kind of go like, hey, white guy, you're an asshole. Hey, male, you're an asshole. Hey, settler, your forefathers came to this country and stole it. You're an asshole. And so after a while, you get called an asshole enough, you start to get angry. You start to get, your back gets up, and I'm going, man, I'm getting called a lot of things. I'm getting blamed for a lot of stuff that, did I really do it? And I go, well, it is a part of who I am. There's no denying that I'm a white male settler. I can't argue with that. That is who I am. That is what I am. But there's other lines in that poem. There's one that I quite like where I sort of talk about there's no something on the DNA strand that gives you immunity from sorrow and heartbreak and all of the very human things that every human being has to. Yeah. And in fact, some human beings, they're further down in the gene pool, and it's even worse for them, you know. So, but what the process of writing led me to finally was, how much do we really know ourselves? Like, how much from day to day, when you look at yourself in the mirror, when you go about your activities, when you're deciding what it is that you believe and what you don't believe, and who you're going to vote for and who you're going to vote against, and all of the things that we do in the 7 circles of life, you know, like, how much do we really know ourselves? And the truth is, lots of times we don't. We're acting out of our anger, or we're acting out of our you know, there's virtue and there's vice, and we often work out of vice. We often do things out of our own greed and out of our own ignorance, you know. So there's so much that you know, we have to keep working at all the time. So that line to me speaks to that thing of the work that we all have to do. If you're a stranger to yourself, why are you coming to judgment about others?
That's very valid.
Yeah, thank you. It took me a while to arrive at that. And of course, how is it, have there not been, you know, many other writers and poets in the past that have come to exactly the same? Yes, of course, you know, like the morality isn't that much different than something you can find in the Bible, really, you know. But it, you know, it was my process that led me to that, you know, realization of my own, in my own words, which is my poetry, which, you know, in the end, poetry, that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of journal writing. You're just trying to figure yourself out, you know. There was a great book that gave me license, Stephanie Burt, and it was kind of like a textbook about poetry. It's called The Poem Is You. And the title kind of says it, you know. Yeah. You write a poem, and even if you're trying to keep yourself out of it, man, the poem's you. You know, when I write a song, the song's me. You know, that's the song. You know,
so much does word economy, word economy, come into play in writing poems? Probably much more so even than in lyrics.
You bet. Although the other thing about poetry that you don't get with lyrics, there are some words that they sound good when they're sung, right? And the phrasing sounds good and it works. And so a lot of songs end up having kind of the same song words in them, you know, because they just sound good. But in a poem, I could come up with a word that might be 5 syllables, you know, and it's the right word. And I've gotten out the goddamn thesaurus and I found it, and I go, that's exactly the word I want. That is precisely what I'm trying to convey. And in a poem, you could do that. You could use that, you know.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about the meter, the pentameter, or anything like that.
Yeah, or somebody going, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, right. Get the dictionary.
What is antediluvian? I don't know what that is, you know.
Hey, Donovan.
I used to, in songwriting classes, workshops with students, I would say, you can't use that word in a song.
Donovan used that word.
What?
Donovan used that word.
Antediluvian?
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you know, he used it in that. It was a great song. Down Along the Ocean. What the heck? Atlantis is the name of the song.
Okay.
And he's got like a pre-roll speech about this mythical Atlantis, and he used the word antediluvian in that.
There's a song of his I heard just recently. It's called Gertie Man, and it's kind of like, when the Gertie Man can sing songs of love, and he's been rolling along in this tune, and I think Jimmy Page played the guitar on it. I'm not sure about that, but there's this fuzzy guitar that's
it's really good,
like really gnarly. Yeah. I think it's Jimmy Page, but anyhow, so I'm listening to this tune and I'm going, hey, it's getting kind of boring, you know, like, and it gets to about the third verse or something, it goes, then when the roly-poly man. And I went, hurdy-gurdy, roly-poly. Yeah, there's some lyric writing for you.
There's a little bit of drugs involved in that. It was like the or early 60s, I think.
Yeah, and there was shit you could get away with then that you know, maybe some hip hop and rap guys get away with stuff now because, you know, it's like the words are just coming at you like a blizzard, you know. So yeah, but I don't know. When I write a song like Born to Pay, there's an economy, and there's some words that sing well and others don't, you know. But when I write poems, I give myself more license than that.
Yeah, you could. Man, this one was heavy. So, you know, to whatever extent you're comfortable, Rick, remembering Russell, that was very, very solemn, heavy poem. It's about losing your brother to cancer, but it's also equally about the impact that it was emotional for me to read. I can't imagine what it was like to write, about the impact he had on your life. And in our last interview, you alluded to this, and I think you actually shared the story about he wanted you to clean up your act, as you call it in the poem. So, you know, to whatever extent you're comfortable, if you can talk about that, you know, the whole process of that, cleaning up your act, and also, is there anything in particular that allows you to get through those clearly dark days of grief or sadness that you experience as you continue going through this process of grief?
Yeah. Okay. Geez. Those are some heavy questions.
I know.
You asked about 3 or 4.
I know. I should have just broke it down. Let me go 1. I'm sorry.
Well, here's the thing, Craig. You know, you've got Rick here. You're getting to know me.
Yeah.
So when I unpack something, I can take 10 or 12 minutes to unpack one thing. So you just asked some questions where I think I've got an hour. Have we got enough time? Okay. So first of all, let's where you started, the idea of you know, can I handle this question? I'm not sure that I can. So I'll try to do this. I'll try to do this with, you know, as much sort of good spirit as I can. When my brother was sick and dying, and then when he passed away and I had to go to the funeral, I could not emotionally deliver a eulogy. And in fact, it was a song they played at the funeral. After it had played at his funeral, I couldn't sing it live anymore. State of Grace was a song I used to do live. I couldn't do it anymore. I retired the song because I just couldn't get through it emotionally. I think I'm a little stronger than I have been about all of this stuff. But the writing of the poem, it was the heart of the book. It had to be there, you know. There's 2 of them, actually. There's Not So Little Brother, and then there's Remembering Russell. And I think it's about 7 or 8 pages of stuff. You know, it's dense, but it's part of it is it's the eulogy that I couldn't deliver. That's part of it. And part of it was that, you know, trying to get to that emotional center of just, you know, what he meant to me and the legacy of that. And of course, now the next thing you asked was about the whole Triumph thing, whereas, you know, 20 years I've been on the outs with those guys, and my brother was going through the whole thing of how do you know, cleaning up his life, like, you know, all of those kinds of things that you have to do, making sure your will is in place, making sure that the insurance payment's going to come up, like all of these things, you know, what does he want at his funeral, like all of these kinds of horrible, terrible, you know, heavy duty things you've got, but you got to do it, you know. So, you know, I'm with him, and it's getting towards the end game, you know, we're on the green and it's short putts, you know, and he's going, you got baggage, you got tremendous shit you're dragging around. You should try and fix it. And I was going, you know, don't dump that on me. Like you're gonna turn the tables on me here and make this be about me. Don't make this be about me. And he's going, well, but that's what I want. That in my, you know, as one of my life things, I would like that. Can you do that for me? I was like, oh, fuck, you know, I'll try. So I tried, and it worked, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah. What is?
Yeah, what is? Chuck Berry songs.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little misty, but I'm good.
Thank you. The last question I asked, I have never had to go through a grief like that. So that's why I was curious, like, any, anything that helps you, that you do that helps, like, I mean,
All right. Part D of the question.
Right. I had a client years ago, and he told me one time, he said, there's this dirty little 4-letter word that fixes everything. And I said, what is it? And he said, it's time. And that's a great thing to know, because I have, when I've been in the shit at times, I said, okay, now I know this is not forever. But then the bad thing about knowing it, that, and knowing, hey, I'm going to be okay, it's just time. Then you want to, like, where's the fucking time machine? Because you want to escalate, because you don't know, it'll be 6 months, but whatever it is, you just say, okay, I know I got to have a lot of pain, but like, now how can I get through it quicker?
Yeah. One of the very strong metaphors that gets used poetically by, grief counselors and stuff, it is the idea of water and tides, and that grief is like the tide coming in. But a big wave, you don't know, you're never sure when a big one's going to come, but a big one might come and it washes way up the beach,
Yeah.
And grief is like that. And it revisits. You're not sure when, but it comes back. And sometimes it's the most innocuous things that can get you going again, and I think it's just a part of who we are. It's something that we carry around. Now, the guy said that time is a dirty word. I'm not sure that that's the healthy way to think about it for me.
Yeah.
Maybe for that guy it is, but to me, time is, sometimes time is your friend, but that's you making it be that. You're the one that's deciding what time is. Is time going too slow? Is time going too fast? Time is just this inexorable ticking of the clock. It's, to me, and I'm going to go back to the water metaphor, the water is going to run downhill. The river is going to flow. That's what's going to happen. It's gravity. That's time, because the planet spins and it goes in an orbit. And that's the shit that happens that governs everything. The sun will come up, the moon will come out. Like, this is going to happen. And poetry is one of the things that it deals a lot with nature. It deals a lot with birds singing and leaves changing and falling. And like, that's what it does. That's what poetry does. So the answer to your question for me is, time's not a dirty word. Time is just another one of the sections in my, time is something I write about a lot, because how can you be a musician and not be cognizant of time? Time governs everything. Rhythm rules. Rhythm is everything. Yeah. Phrasing to what, who's the leader on the bandstand? It's the fucking drummer. It's always the drummer, because he's the guy that keeps time. You follow his time. You want to be in a great band? Get a great drummer, because you need a great drummer to be in a great band. That's the bottom line. So time, everything's tied to it. Great melody has great time. Great harmony has great time. Like, all of that stuff, it's the poetry of what makes music work. So I'm off on a tangent, but I'm going to come back to my theme, which is, my word is creativity. That's my solution. You got to be creative. And you want to heal? Paint. You want to heal? Write poems. You want to heal? Pick up a guitar. Like, you want to heal? Get creative. Make your life, your seconds that are ticking away, count for doing something where you go, I did that. I painted that wall. Just be creative.
Man, thank you for handling that question.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It was kind of you.
No problem. Hey, I want to go off on a tangent here. I got a thing that I'm working on for my next book of poetry. where I created a line of thought that, like any creative exercise for me, writing songs, writing of poems, playing of guitar, it's a game of connect the dots. So here, here's all of
Very
these.
much.
How do you kind of get from one thing to another thing, and then you got to make it all it's got to integrate, so this connecting of dots. So I'm working on this thing now where I did a bunch of research because I was thinking about how in my life I had to wear a clown mask. I kind of had to be like a court jester, and there's a very famous lyric by Bob Dylan where there's a conversation that's happening between a joker and a thief all along the watchtower. And these were common sort of memes, a metaphor that Dylan would use. The joker was a big one for him, and the thief, they were him. It was him. He was the court jester. He was the joker, and it was the job that he had. And I go, he was dead on. That's truly what we are, because the joker, the court jester, the fool, they speak truth to power. That's what they do. So then I was thinking about Jesus, and I was thinking about Gandhi, and I was thinking about Yoda, and I was thinking about Chauncey Gardiner. Have you ever seen Being There with Peter Sellers? Oh, you got to check that out. That's really worth it. Yeah, because he's a complete innocent in that movie that's being cast into a role because of how others perceive his identity, not how he sees himself.
Being There with Peter Sellers.
Yeah, he's guileless. Yes, it was one of the last roles that he did in his life. But it's an incredible movie where the American political system, he's kind of an idiot savant, and he becomes like a consigliere, like a consultant to the political elite, the president and the president's wife and these people. And he was a gardener, and they even got his name wrong. Like they go, so like, who are you? And he goes, I'm a gardener. And they go, oh, so your last name is Gardner. So Chauncey Gardiner becomes this person anyways. The idea of identity is the thing that ties all of these things together, which of course there's my own. This is how it started. The fact that I had to wear a mask and, be this guy. And John Updike, famous writer, American writer, has said, fame is a mask that eats into the face. And
wow.
And of course, Jim Carrey made a whole movie of that.
Yeah.
The mask that once he put it on, it was harder and harder to get it off. And I think that that's true of everyone. We all have to have masks. We all have to put on different ones depending on the roles that we're in and stuff. But there's one, and this is coming back to what you said. I was a college professor for like 2 decades. I would go in every week and I would prepare lessons and deliver lectures. And you get up there, and I would often say, I'm a dog that gets on his hind legs and barks. Like I deliver, and I'm a court jester. You kind of entertain, but you're also kind of like Yoda. You're supposed to say these wise and witty things, and you're sitting in judgment, and they're all going to give you back assignments and tests, and you're going to sit in judgment of them, and they know that. And so there's this whole thing that's going on where you're supposed to be like authoritative, and you go, well, that was a mask that was an interesting one to wear for a while, So anyhow, the poem's not finished. But there's this line of connecting the dots that I'm still working on, where all of these things are showing up and these characters and these things, and it'll eventually, hopefully, fit on one page. But it's a couple of acres of grain,
Awesome. So are you going to write? Is the next book? It's going to be an autobiography, though, or this is another book besides autobiography.
Every day I write. Every
That's
day
cool.
I get out my notebook and I as we're talking, I know you're wired the same way. There's things I say and you're going, ooh, well, yeah, I'm being there. Oh, okay, I'm going to check that out. Like, there has to be this kind of, you do have to be like a detective, and you're trying to figure out who done it. And if you're wired that way, I think, you know, it keeps you healthy. It keeps you moving forward. And that's how the process works. But I like to give insight to the process too, because the mask that's the Yoda mask, like, all right, listen to me because I have tremendous wisdom to distribute, to give to you folks, you know, to disseminate. Like, I'm not sure that I'm all that wise. You know?
Yeah, I get that.
In truth, I think even if we could get Jesus here in one of these little screens, in one of these squares, and we go, okay, Jesus, let's talk about identity, and let's talk about, you know, and he would go, no, let me be clear about this, okay? I think humility is a big part of this. Like, let me give you some beatitudes, okay? I think the meek are going to inherit the earth because, you know, I think humility is a big part of how this has to work. And even though I'm telling you I'm the son of God, I will also readily admit I am a carpenter's son. Like, I learned how to be a carpenter. And it took me a long time to sort of get to the point where people were calling me rabbi, but I'm not sure I dig the rabbi thing. I think I'd like to go and throw all the rabbis out of the temple, you know? So, you know, that part of me that's the don't want to necessarily buy into authority, you know, I think that's even for myself. I'm too authoritative. I don't,
I have this expression that I got, and it's smart people realize how little they know, and it's stupid people, the ones that think they know everything.
Oh yeah, self-righteous. Oh
well, it's just like, you know, like sometimes, you know, like you, I've been married a long time with the same woman, and some people say to me, well, what's a success? I said, I don't really know. I've only had one really long-term relationship. I'm just, you know, happy that the day we wake up happy and we get I couldn't, you know, like, I'm just learning this shit myself. How the hell do I know?
I think, again, it comes back to humility and simplicity. I want her to be happy. I want to make her happy.
Right.
You know, I don't always succeed.
Well, of course. I mean, 24/7, it's just not statistically possible that you.
Well, and the other thing is that I'm a selfish prick. There's that side, you know, I'm an artist. And so that's a terrible thing to have to subject anybody to. My poor kids, you know. And in truth, like, we're going to get to the shit that I regret. Like, I spent so much of my life, you know, being away from them when they needed me. And I was being selfish, you know, because I was a rock star and I was making a lot of money and I could write checks and throw checks at problems.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a solution either. You know, people that are, you know, sitting around thinking, well, if I had more money, you know, then I would have a better life and I would be a better person. You go, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, but
you give them money and it comes with its own set of problems, and the making of money and the accumulation thereof and chasing that, it's also making you become, you know, egotistical and self-centered, and, you know, and that's not healthy either.
But look, I think we all have stuff we regret, but it's not like you had two choices and someone said, hey, you could travel all over the world and get all this money and dance around the stage in spandex, or you could sit in your smoking room in your smoking jacket and we'll pay you the same amount of money to just play your guitar.
No.
You can't look at it, you know, you can't beat yourself up for that.
But you just turned it into an either or, and it's never either or.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That was your option, man.
Yeah, no, there's always options. There's always choices. That's what I'm saying. I made some choices where I was shortchanging my kids. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Like, and should I be humble about it, and should I own it? I think I should.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I went to therapy so that I could get to the point where I go, you know, this shit you got to own here, brother. Like, there's poems in the book. There's one called Geologia, which is one I wrote it for my therapist. It was, and she didn't ask for it. She just had led me to the point where I was going, I think I got to try and make sense of this, you know. So I wrote the poem and sent it to her, and she goes, good. you're making progress. This is great. You know, you're really starting to see some things that you need to see. So, you know, that's part of it. When, you know, the forward says recreational therapy, I'm not kidding. The writing of the stuff was therapeutic. You know,
this is funny. I saw a guy the other day on Facebook, and he was saying, you know, hey, it's our anniversary, and they've been together longer than, I mean, like, in the 30s of years, and this has been a great run. And this was really odd. He said, I don't think we've ever said a harsh word to one another. And I'm like, you must not have lived together.
yeah.
How do you go through 30 something years and not say, that's not even possible?
But I you know, okay, well, you know, let me debate this with you. I think there are some people that they're just very humble. And so they're not going to put themselves and their own needs and their own ideas, they're not going to force them on somebody else. They go, no, I don't need to do that. And they're very comfortable in their own skin in that regard. But, you know, when I was too full of myself, that's when when I would yell at my wife, or I would lose my temper. Like, part of having an artistic character is also that I am impetuous and I am quick to judge, quick to anger, quick, you know. But it was part of quickness was part of the thing. It's in the poems, you know. I was a jackrabbit, you know. I still hold the record for the 100-yard dash for my high school, because the year once I set the record, they changed from yards to meters.
Oh, so it's an unbreakable. I was
never going to get it broken.
Record.
Yeah, but I ran a 10 flat 100 when I was 16 years old. 10 flat 100 is pretty good.
That's very good. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, for a 16-year-old kid, it was pretty damn good. There were some other 16-year-olds that could run 9.7. Believe me, you know, like I wasn't the fastest guy in the country. You know, I would make it maybe to the semifinals of the national thing, and I would lose. I would finish last in my heat. You know, at 10, but 10 flat was the best I ever ran, and I only ran it once. And I do believe the timers were probably drunk Kiwanis Kinsman.
Yeah, but back to you. I don't see how it's possible to have a relation. If you're a passionate person, how are you not going to get fired up over 30 years? I just didn't see that was possible.
No, but some people aren't. They're in control of their passion. They don't boil at those temperatures. You know, they're never going to lose their. I think there are. I've met people like that. There's people like that. You know, well, I wonder if, you know, Mother Teresa ever yelled at anybody. You know, that's interesting. For people, you mentioned a comment earlier about putting this out there. For people who are listening or watching who might be thinking, man, I'd love to do something different like this, but I'm scared to put it out there. What advice would you have for them? Besides age 25 years and not give a shit at that point. Yeah. Okay, so here's my latest theory. Fear is the uphill part of the mountain. And then courage is downhill. So in other words, people say to me, oh man, you're so brave. And I go, actually, no. I was really afraid, but I did a lot of work. And I worked hard. I was like Sisyphus pushing that fucking rock up the hill, you know. But I actually got to the top in this particular instance with this particular rock.
Yeah.
I got to the top, and then now the rock's rolling downhill. And it's actually easy to be brave if you've done all the hard work about the fear. And fear is the thing that'll stop you from writing the book. But you got to do the hard work, you know, just do the work. And if you do the work, like work ethic to me is a really important part of who I am and the things that I do. And there's things that I worked at that cost me in other places where I should have been putting some work, where I needed to do work, you know. But if there's something that is like I've said already earlier, that creativity to me, it's a great healer. It's a great therapeutic thing. It gives you self-worth. It delivers on a lot of levels. And sharing creativity with people is a beautiful thing. Like, there's stuff that I wish I had more time for in my life. Like, I would love to go and join a choir and go and sing in a choir once a week, twice a week, just because I think therapeutically it's a great thing to do, that you're sharing this creative thing with a whole bunch of people and you're all, united. I used to love band rehearsals. I loved them more than I loved gigs because I loved that process of just creative work with other people. I really liked that. I loved team sports way more than I liked. I was pretty good at tennis, but I didn't like it anywhere near as much as basketball or football. Like, I loved team. Baseball was my number one. I loved it. I loved being part of a team. I loved being in the dugout. Loved being in the dressing room. Hated sprinting because you do it by yourself. Liked the relay.
Yeah.
Pass the baton to somebody else. I love that. So that's what I think. I think, you want to overcome your fear, find a way where you're being creative and cooperating with other people, where you're giving of yourself in a family unit, in a community unit, in a neighborhood unit. That's my advice.
That's good. I like it. Fear is the uphill part of the mountain. 2 more questions, Rik. Do you have a favorite poem in the book?
I have different favorites, and of course, I've been doing a lot of interviews and stuff now, and other people will get back to me and say, okay, you know what my favorite was this, or, oh, you know what my favorite was that, One of the things that I love about poetry is that it can be so different, like from page to page. You've really got a lot of license, a lot of freedom to be able to do different kinds of things. So there's a poem in there that's based on something that one of my daughters at 3 years of age said to her mother in the kitchen when they were, my wife was like washing dishes or cooking or something. And the 3-year-old comes into the kitchen and is standing behind her. So, she knows she's there, but she says, Mommy, do heels make noise? And, my wife's washing dishes. She goes, oh yeah, honey, they make, yeah. Like when you walk in your shoes. And she goes, no, Mommy, do heels make noise? And my wife goes, yeah, yes, they do. When you're walking, the bottoms of your shoes could make a noise on the floor. She goes, no, Mommy, do heels make noise? And she turns around, my wife finally, and looks, and she's looking at a scab on her arm.
So she's wanting to know, when you heel, does it make a noise?
Yeah, and a 3-year-old's curiosity. She's going,
yeah.
Do heels make noise? But I love that poem because I love the idea of So we were talking about the poem and my daughter, and she's looking at the scab, and she's saying to herself, in a 3-year-old's mind, she's going, do heels make noise? But the thing that I love about poems, and that one in particular, which is a tiny little short one on the page, is that the healing that I had to do about my brother, the healing that I do when I play my guitar and I turn my amp up, the healing that I do makes noise. I write poetry books to heal. So that's why that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Okay. And it's called Do Heels Make Noise, that poem? No.
Heals.
Yeah, right. Thanks. And then one last question to circle back. Did you figure out who you are?
Well, we're always a work in progress, aren't we, Craig?
Oh, hell yeah. You kidding me?
Yeah. So, I think it helps to figure out, who we've been, and so where we were at, and all of those kinds of things. I think that's helpful because it gives us perspective. But I mean, one of the things I write about in the poems is time is past, present, and future, and the whole Zen Buddhist thing of being in the now, as opposed to you don't want to live in the past. I that's gone. I don't care. I mean, I care because I don't want the Santa Ana thing. I don't want to have to, repeat my mistakes over and over and over again.
Of course.
And I care about the future because I'd like a good one. So, the work that I do here in the present has to kind of be geared towards having a nice, good future, but I don't want to be so worried about the future that there's no present where I'm going like, oh God, I'm afraid. What if this happens? Or what if that happens? The future is the territory of fear.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't want to go there. I just want to be here. So, have I figured out who I am? No.
That's in book 3.
I think I can live with this guy that I'm seeing here in this screen. I think I've come to terms with him in better ways than I used to, in healthier ways than I used to. But is it a work in progress? Hell yeah,
Man, first, thank you. I really appreciate it. I don't know. It's always when I talk to someone a second time, this is not uncommon. Like it opens up even more, man. And I thank you for that gift. I appreciate that.
Well, I like it too. And it's nice when I get to do an interview with someone and I know that they've read the book and I know that they've, they're not just asking the standard stuff. And I know that, you use guitar as the thing that unlocks the door, but once we're in there, like all that stuff that you have from when you were in ad agencies and all that shit, like it's good. I like it. There's a depth to this that I really appreciate. So
thanks, man. Feelings mutual.
Good.
Let me tell people, I would love everybody to check out Rik's book. It's called Reinvention. I think he was pretty open about the reinvention that he's been doing. It's on Amazon.com. There it goes. Rik Emmett, Reinvention Poems. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon.com. There's a book and audio. Rik's first name is spelled, remember, R-I-K-E-M-M-E-T-T. There you go. You could also find it on ECW Press and also on his website, rikemmett.com. And for those of you listening, remember that I'm going to post Rik's original interview right after this in just a moment.
There's a forum on the website.
Right. Okay.
But the thing that's been lovely lately is, the core group of folks, they know that I've been pretty busy. My kid got married. I've been doing promo for this stuff. Oh, I'm going to go out and play a gig on the weekend, for the first time in a couple of years. So they've been kind of laying off. They haven't been posting a lot of questions lately. They've been giving me some space, which is good because I think they know that I'm up against it in certain ways.
Well, I'm happy that you wrote the book, man. I think it's done a lot of good for you. And I think people that read it will do a lot of good for them. And I look forward to the next one to come out. Next one. So it's going to be a book, a proper beefy, like autobiography.
Well, let me tell you this. The memoir is, there's been ones like Keith Richards.
Oh, I still have it. It's too much.
Very thick. Eric Clapton's was very thick. And, I like Eric Clapton. I don't like what he had to say about COVID, but, I like Eric Clapton. And his book was boring.
You didn't like it, really? I thought it was. I liked the part where he talked about his recovery. I found that really interesting.
Yeah, but he didn't go into enough depth. I learned more about Eric Clapton's drug stuff and his recovery from Ron Wood's book than I did from Eric Clapton's book.
I haven't read that one.
I think he was being, and you know, I think Clapton is the soul of discretion. He always has been a gentleman on stage. He's not a guy that makes big faces when he plays. You know, he's, and I think his biography was kind of like that too. It was, you know, reserved. It was
British.
Yeah. But they're too long, and the part of it too is like, you know, Keith Richards. It's like you're reading it and you're going, yeah, Keith, I don't really care who your uncle on your mother's side 2 generations back, you know, what he did for a living. Like, can't we get to the part where you and Mick are fighting about something? Or come on, I want give me some of the juice here, please.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, you know, for me, I want to know how these guys think. I want to know about their process. And I think they kind of go, I don't want to reveal too much about that. Or maybe they go, I don't know. I like, there's a lot of musicians.
Sorry, you're at a stage of your life where process is really important to you, where, you know, breaking things down, not everybody is there.
That's exactly it. I think
it's a difficult thing.
Some guys are musicians because they play.
Right.
And they're not even sure why they play what they play. They just kind of do it on instinct. And so then you ask them, can you please articulate what it is that you just did? And they go, no, I can't. Sorry. I ask myself, and I can't answer myself because I'm just not very articulate. And I mean, one of the things that made me become a teacher was that I had this kind of desire to articulate, you know. And I think when I write my memoir, there's going to be certain things that I really do want to articulate. But because now I've had this experience as a poet, I think I'm going to try and find the poetic distillation to make the memoir be 300 and some odd pages of this really is well written and articulate, and it gets to the juice of the stuff. You know, there's going to be some stuff. It's not going to be. I'm not going to write about it. You know, but there's going to be some stuff that I definitely sink my teeth into a very juicy steak. You know, and, like, it's going to happen. Like, but having said that, you know, I've got another book of poetry easily ready to go. Well, I shouldn't say ready to go. I write in spiral note. I'm just going to show you this so you can see this. This is what my notebooks look like.
Oh, cool.
You know, so they're a mess, right? I'm going to find one that's particularly.
Are you at the point yet where you can't read your own writing? Because I love writing, but I guess age, I don't read my writing.
No, so sometimes it's a problem. But in that case, I'll show you. So there's a draft of something. That's kind of what a page looks like. And then the next day, it's getting a little cleaner and tidy.
Okay, it's like editing a song, man.
Yeah, but now I will type that into a computer, and then I'll play with it in the computer for another 6 months.
Yeah.
I'll move lines around. I'll reread them and I'll go, that's not the right word. You know, I'm going to look online and find the thesaurus. I'm going to see what other words I could use. Or, you know, I'll take lines out. I'll move verses around. You know, like I'll decide, do I want to indent the line? Do I want a capital letter at the beginning of the line? Is that the right pronoun? You know, am I going to change the voice from I to we, from I to he? You know, like I make all of those kinds of changes and constantly revise, asking myself those questions. You know, I'd like to try and get my own voice out of it a little more, actually. Like, because there's so much autobiography in the first one. The next one, I kind of like to write more about he, they. You know, we live in a time of this Me Too thing and pronouns. The people from ECW Press, when they send the little, you know, an email and at the end it's their name, and then they'll be like,
he, him. Yeah. I see that a lot, man.
Yeah. And so there's a pronoun thing that I really kind of want to try and get into and address, you know, in my next book of poetry, because I would like to try and extract the I, me, mine out. And I went back, I listened to George Harrison's I, me, mine the other day, and, you know.
Old song, man.
Yeah, but, you know, Harrison, he was he got into a very spiritual kind of place it was hip. It was, you know, and he was trying to extract his own ego out of it in his process. And he did some great work. George Harrison wrote some great songs. And was a great guitar player. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And of course, he and Clapton were very, very good friends. In fact, to the point where they traded wives.
Yeah. How funny is that? Yeah.
Okay. See, and when I read a memoir, I wanna find out about that. Like, come on, give me the juicy, salacious stuff. You know, why did you trade wives? How did that come about?
I don't know.
Anyhow.
I had this, I'm going to go after this, but I had this guy in the gym up to 5-6 years ago, and he was saying something about his girlfriend. I said, "Oh, I thought you were married." He goes, "I am married." And I was like, "Oh," and he goes, "You don't have a girlfriend?" And I'm like, "No, I'm married." He goes, and he was dead serious. He's like, "But you don't have a girlfriend?" I said, "Listen, I can't manage the fucking one relationship I have. Like, I mean, are you out of your mind?" I mean, and like he had multiple, I almost had like sort of respect for him because he had like these multiple, I mean, how do you, I wasn't kidding him when I said that. I mean, like, I can't do the one. It's like, and you know, anyway, man. So
yeah, well, yeah, to me, that would come back to the whole thing about humility. That guy, at some point, he's going to get humbled.
Oh my God. I mean,
something's going to happen there where he's going to have to just experience a whole lot of humility.
Yeah. Well, better him than me, man. Let me tell you.
Exactly. What kind of a life do you want? Like, imagine the dancing he has to do just to try and avoid things blowing up in his face.
Yeah. I can't. Like I said, I genuinely can't manage. I mean, one, I mean, you know, it's enough. Rik, thanks very much for everything. Let me just tell everybody again, check out Reinvention, Amazon.com. It's the book and the audio, ECW Press or Rik Emmett, RIK Emmett.com. And man, I hope the book does great, and pat yourself on the back for doing a really good job.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it on your socials with your friends. Thanks very much to Rik Emmett. Check out his book, Reinvention. It's a very cool book of poetry, and he gets very personal and heavy in there. And that's it, man. Remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Rik, thanks for everything, brother.
You're welcome.
Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And it's a real honor and a privilege to have my guest with me today. We're with Rik Emmett, of course, from Triumph. And he's had a very long, robust solo career after that, or as he's known in Canada as Rik Rocket Emmett. Couple of quick announcements. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show on audio and video. And also Carlos Santana, Joe Walsh. If you can connect me with them, please do. I'd love those guys on my show. Let me give you a real quick background of Rik. I would imagine 90% of people listening to this already know Rik, but just in case, let me tell you, first of all, before I just he's an incredibly nice guy. He's a very kind person, man. I mean, he's just a sweetheart of a guy, and he's fighting the good fight every day, like all of us, man. All right, Rik Emmett. He was a relatively unknown singer, songwriter, guitarist on the local Toronto scene in September of '75. Joined a newly formed hard rock trio called Triumph, which of course was Rik on lead guitar and vocals, Mike Levine on bass and keys, and Gilmore on drums and vocals. By '79, 4 years later, 3 Triumph albums had gone platinum in Canada, 2 charted here in the States. By '81, Triumph was firmly established as one of the premier touring rock acts in North America. They had generous FM radio airplay support and heavy rotation on MTV. Over the next 7 years, the band released 10 gold albums. 4 turned platinum in Canada, and in the US, 2 went gold. Rick's name frequently appeared in guitar magazine polls, and he won a lot of prestigious national guitar awards. As one of Triumph's original members, he was inducted into the Canadian Rock Hall of Fame in '93, the Music Industry Hall of Fame in 2007, and the Junos Hall of Fame in 2008. Triumph reunited briefly for concerts in Sweden and Oklahoma in the summer of 2008, and they were inducted into Canadian Walk of Fame in 2019. In 1988, Rik left Triumph to pursue a solo career. Since then, he's released 20, I hope that number is accurate, studio and live albums in various solo projects. He's toured periodically. He's won a variety of awards for these records, including Duo of the Year, Album of the Year, Guitarist of the Year, and his first solo release called Absolutely went gold. His solo projects, this is a guy who's, as a musician, goes way beyond Triumph. And I would really encourage all the big guitar geeks out there to check out Rik's solo catalog. He's incredibly talented. Gypsy jazz, folk, acoustic, classical. I mean, he's all over the board. His solo projects, like I said, acoustic guitar, smooth jazz, world music, progressive rock, and folk. Over in the last few years, he's toured periodically in a duo with guitarist Dave Dunlop, and he has a new album that's out now called Folk Songs for the Farewell Bonfire, and he's got a bunch of stuff that goes with it, and we'll talk about that later on. And if you haven't checked out his last rock record, it's called Resolution 9. There's some very good rock and roll on there, man. So just check out everything Rik's doing. Rik, thank you so much for your time, and I'll shut up now. Thanks for everything. Right on.
Okay, thanks for the interview.
I know, I'm exhausted. Oh man, how did you first get started in the music business, and like what was the first break you guys had?
Well, I mean, these things happen gradually, and it depends on how you define the music business. Like if you play, a public school or a high school dance, and you're playing for the door, I suppose that's professional show business. But so I mean, I did that when I was still in high school, But I mean, when I was still in high school, the big thing was I tore my knee up playing football when I was 17, and that was when I sort of my life changed, and I went, okay, I'm going to try and get serious with the guitar. So I really started doing some shedding, and very short order, I sort of knew some guys in my high school, got me involved in playing weddings and bar mitzvahs, and so I had a suit, and I got a telly and a little Fender amp, and I started being a jobbing musician, and reading like song charts. Not really. I couldn't sight read, but I could follow a chart, because I'd sung in church choirs and school choirs, and I'd done all that in the background. So anyhow, I got my union card, and I was, jobbing by the time I was 18, and always had basement bands and things, and they would play shows from time to time. But the first big break was we auditioned a guy. A drummer friend of mine and I were going to start a thing to play Holiday Inn lounges, like a straightforward kind of a pop thing. And we were auditioning bass players, and a guy was a really long-haired dude from out in Winnipeg. And he said, look, I don't want to join your thing, and your drummer's piece of shit anyways. But he goes, why don't you come to an audition that I'm doing? Because I think you're really good, and I think they want you. And it's for this singer called Justin Page. And they've got a record deal cooking with Capitol Records in Canada. And so that would have been sort of 1973, 74, somewhere around there. And I got that audition, and I was in the band. And so I toured with that for about almost a year, 9 months, was part of the album project. And they had,
so was this after school, or were you still in high school at the time?
No, I was out of school now, and I'd already done one semester in college.
Okay.
Where I was studying jazz, and the teacher said, "No, don't quit." And I was going, "No, why should I stay here? I can see which guys are going to become, the jingle players and the guys that are the studio cats, because they can read fly shit. They're amazingly great players.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at putting on a pair of spandex pants and wiggling my butt."
And Rik is wearing spandex pants right now to prove that point.
So there is a little stretch in these jeans. Anyhow, so I was way ahead of my time.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so yeah, so that record, they had a guy, I can't remember, Lee DiCarlo was the name of the producer, and he knew the guys that played in Alice Cooper's band, like Prakash John, the bass player, and Hunter and Wagner, the two guitar players there, Steve Hunter, Dick Wagner, I think.
I had
And
Steve
so
Hunter on the show here, man. He's a pretty interesting cat. Yeah.
yeah, and those were pretty interesting times, right?
Very
But
much.
the band that I was in we cross-dressed and wore crazy outfits, and the singer was sort of a transvestite kind of character because of whole, Bowie and Lou Reed and all of that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, and Alice Cooper, and so the makeup and everything. So yeah, that was that band, and they made one album, and he had Hunter and Wagner play on the album and stuff. It went nowhere, but I was itching and wanted to get into a progressive rock band, and so I did that on my own for a bit, and then the summer of '75. Triumph came around and said, "Hey, you want to, we want you to be our guitar player. We've got this record deal thing, and blah blah blah, and you're the guy." And so in September of '75, I started with Triumph, and so I suppose that was the beginning. But when you the question is about breaks, and sometimes breaks, you have no idea what a break is until you're looking back at it. With 10 years in your pocket.
Yes.
And you go, huh. I made that decision back then, and I had no idea that it was changing my life, So,
you're 100% self-taught.
well, yes and no. I mean, when I first started, and this is a pretty good story for guitar players. I'm what they call dextro-sinistral, which means I do things of strength with my left hand, but I do fine motor control with my right. So I would swing a bat left-handed. I would throw a baseball left-handed. But when I pick up a pen to write, I write with my right hand. When I pick up a fork to eat, I eat with my right hand. So it's not that unusual, but, left-handed people are only 10% of the population. So dextrosinistrality would be a very small, and the other side of it is sinistrodextral, where some people have their right hand is their strong hand and their left hand is their fine motor control. Anyways, so when I first picked up a guitar, I wanted to play like Paul McCartney and get my hands in the camera there. I wanted to play this way.
Yeah.
And I won 8 free lessons from a place called the Regency School of Music. And I had a teacher, his name was Jack Arsenault. And Jack was a left-handed guy who played guitar right-handed. And he took the guitar from me and he said, no, you're going to play it this way. And I went, oh, no, this feels weird, like just completely weird. And he said, just trust me, all right? Give me a month. And I promise you, you will be better than all of your right-handed friends because your power hand is on the fretboard. And true enough, I mean, the things that people find so difficult when they're first starting, like an F chord where you're trying to get that little mini bar with your first finger, like people, like right-handed people struggle like crazy with that.
Yeah.
But it only took me about, a few days and I was going, oh, I got that. So it's like, I was way ahead of, and then people are going, oh, Rick, you're so good. And now you're getting positive feedback. It's just one of those fluky things, So anyhow, so I had lessons from him. And then, as I said, I played violin in high school for like 5 years. So I had, some kinds of sort of formal musical, you could play it, sang in choirs and stuff. But I went to college for 1 semester, and I studied with a guy named Peter Harris, who sort of became a mentor of mine. But to be honest, and I don't want this to sound like too much puffery, but I feel like I had so much of a kind of a natural gift and natural talents that lessons was not my thing. It was like, no, I'll just learn it by ear, and I'll wiggle my pants and spandex, wiggle my ass in spandex pants, and, I'll have a career, So, yeah, I was a performer. I wasn't really a schooled academic kind of player,
But where did you learn? I mean, all the stuff you've done post Triumph is not, it's far from easy. You got to be skilled to do that.
Yeah.
When did you, I mean, like that, when did you pick that up? That you didn't just fall off a log?
I think it was always kind of a part of me, and I've really just kept working on that. And, I should make this point that, people think about gifts or talents, and if I talk about them, it starts to sound like I'm bragging.
No, it doesn't at all. It doesn't. 100%. Don't worry about that. No.
It's stuff that I had.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but it's also a burden. You have this thing where you have to service it.
Yes.
It's like if you were a tremendous athlete and then, you know, you start to play a sport and then somebody says, okay, it's good, but you are going to have to work out 4 hours a day and then show up for practices, and you'll have to be in the batting cage for 2.5 hours until blisters come every day, you know, because you're servicing this gift that you have. And
Right.
that's one of the things that separates wheat from chaff, is that, you know, yeah, you know, so it was a thing that I always, and I had to service it. So a bit of a burden, but also, you know, an honor that you have this in your life, right?
Yes, and I'm going to come back to this point later on because it's something that's pretty consistent, you know, through everything I've read, you know, especially the stuff you sent me back, you know. All right. So I'm going to ask you a couple of Triumph questions. I know there's probably a question about Triumph. There's not a question you haven't asked. So this is like my disclaimer apology for this part of the interview.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I just want to ask it because maybe somebody, you know, people listening haven't heard it. So, and also, and I think, you know, this, my interest is not like gossip at all. It's just like curiosity about the situation.
Sure.
Okay.
I get it.
So if Wikipedia is correct, which the bar is low there, it is, if you got a pulse, you can get on Wikipedia, or if you got a computer or connection. Your first concert with Triumph was at Simcoe High School in September 75. So my first question is, what do you remember about that show?
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know, in the rehearsals leading up to it, how we were just trying to build this. I think our PA system had empty boxes, like just, you know, it looked like speaker cabinets, but you know, there was no speaker in it, just so that the PA would look more massive. And there was probably light cans, par cans that had no bulbs in them. But we were trying to, you know, put on a show. And so we had this really large truck, and the truck got onto the grass as it was backing up to the high school gym's doors. And then when we finished the gig, the principal didn't want to pay us. These, you know, mangy rock and roll guys with their long hair that were so uppity that had brought this, you know, tractor trailer truck to their school. And it was like, why should I pay you? You wrecked our grass. And it was like, well, you signed a contract and you have to pay us. And so there was a slight altercation in the principal's office as our drummer was getting paid. So I remember that. And I mean, I have lots of memories about it. And we've just gone through the exercise of a documentary. Banger Films is making so there's been a lot of rehashing. We did a fan fest back in November of 2019, and they made a museum and they had pictures. So we
at the high school?
No, in a warehouse. And Triumph played. We actually got up for fans that they'd flown in from all over the world, Brazil and Sweden and you know, the States. And yeah, so there's been a lot of this, you know, traipsing back down memory lane. And that gig with the first one, you know, obviously there's been a lot of talk about it. We played China Grove as the closer, the set closer, because it had, you know, the gang, chicky, gang.
Yeah, from the Doobie Brothers, sure, yeah.
So you could blow off flashpots, go pow, 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 pow. So that's a memory I have of that.
That is cool. First gig, you're blowing shit up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. And as we did for the rest of our careers, until we just blew up the career itself.
Yeah, man. I had somebody on here recently that said, only successful bands argue. They said the band doesn't start arguing until it gets successful. And it was probably a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, and the things that you argue about change. You know,
of course.
When you start and you haven't got a pot to piss in, you're all arguing about, you know, the building of a pot.
The art. Art.
Well, you know, whatever's going to make your band become successful, you know. And then when you get success, and that's, I mean, what are we talking about? You know, 5% of bands that start, maybe less.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. You know, only 10% of bands that make a first album make a second.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
That's a known statistic. So, but once you have success, then, you know, then what's happening in a band's life? You know, guys are getting married and having kids, and, you know, there's houses now, and there's real estate investments, and so now there's arguing about money and about power, that becomes the things that they fight about. And then that's why bands break up.
Yeah.
Because George Harrison isn't getting enough songs on the Beatles records.
Okay. By 1980, 5 years later, things had really taken off. So you're in your late 20s. Question was, during this period of time, as this started happening, as the money started coming, and as the people are nuts for celebrities, and as that started happening, so you become, or the guitar player in Triumph becomes in demand. Everybody wants a piece of you. How did you keep grounded? How did you maintain and not get all caught up in this stuff?
Well, I think the simple answer to that, and I'm going to try and give you short, simple answers, and it's not my style, but
no, you don't have to, man. Just be yourself.
If I
please.
ramble, though,
No, you're fine.
I know how many questions you had. I'm looking at my watch.
Trust me on this.
So here's the thing. My answer to this question is for me personally, I didn't get into it so that I could become rich and famous. Rich would be nice. Rich would be fabulous. But famous was it was never really part of the equation. And I say this, I had a gift for being a kind of a class clown, quick wit, quick lip, blah, blah, like the kinds of things that showbiz gets built on. I was pretty good at it, but I never really gave a shit about it.
Yeah.
I really did care deeply about music. I loved music. So, the success was great and the money was great. Being famous, that was a sort of a burden, a thing that was getting in the way of other stuff that I wanted to try and do. So I already had a kind of what I would call a modest, humble grounding.
Yeah.
Because I saw music as this infinite challenge. It was like, this is going to be for the rest of my life, and you're never even going to get close to it. Every time you get looking at it, it's like you're staring into the face of God. It's like, oh, this is ridiculous, So I think that's what kept me humble. And I think eventually it also led to me leaving the band and, going out on my own and, decide, like, what jazz music is in the marketplace right now? What is the jazz market in? Do you want to take a guess?
You mean as a percentage of?
Yeah, as a percentage of the music business, what is jazz?
As a percentage, you're talking about revenue or population of artists?
Everything. Yeah, okay. Well, revenue. Let's that's your bottom line. That's the revenue.
I would have to say it's under 5%.
Yeah, it's 1% right now.
Yeah.
When I was teaching college, it was 3%. So it's been going down, Yeah. So, and I'm not going to get into the advent of other cultural memes and things that, have started to take marketplace away. I'm just saying, there's not a lot of people that are into jazz music. The ones that are know that it's probably the highest of all musical callings. It's the most challenging, certainly. It's the deepest, and, it even presents more of a challenge than classical music, I think, personally. But classical is probably only, another 4 or 5% of the marketplace, really. It's tiny. But those are the things that really actually have the, to me, the depth, the substance. So, and I'm not necessarily, I don't consider myself to be that substantial a musician necessarily, but I think that's true of if you had Pat Metheny here, he'd be humble too, because
but that's not accurate. That's not accurate, what you just said. I mean, I understand the humility of it, and I probably would be saying the same thing if I had that kind of talent. But the fact is, you are a very talented player, and I'm not just saying it to blow smoke up your ass. I assure you.
No,
I mean,
thank you, and I appreciate that. But the thing is, before you edited this, when we were talking before we got started, we were talking about the sort of the ignorance and the stupidity of so much of culture, of society, and how it gets pretty frustrating, and I taught college for a couple of decades, and I had college kids that had passed auditions to get into that program, and I would be going, kid, you're going to make me tear my hair out here. Come on, try and meet me halfway on this. Okay. So you can become misanthropic,
totally.
in light of a lot of this stuff. So this is where this thing about humility comes in. Like in the end, I'm going to be the judge of me. Thank you very much. Like I enjoy talking to you, but you're not going to be the guy that decides what's going to be right for me.
Nor should I. Hope not. Yeah.
And I think that's what artists do. Of all stripes.
Yeah, man. They allow themselves. It's interesting because it's, the entertainment business. I could see where this is a problem, having spoken to so many people, because it's one of the few industries where literally your status, many times your financial wherewithal, is determined by how many people, or by how people like you, how much people like you. And I can see that becoming very hard not to be your mantra of, well, how do I'm defining you got to work to not define yourself by how others like you.
It's a game of balance, right? Like if you're in commercial music, it's commercial.
Yes.
And it's called music business. Business is a bigger word than music.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fundamental kind of thing. And you're trying to find that balance point. Where can I, my art, my calling, and this idea of selling records. But I mean, I saw a rough cut of the documentary the other day, and there's a quote on there that I was talking about how it was so disappointing to me, depressing, to be in a circumstance where you're realizing that the record company doesn't see you for what you think you are. And, managers don't, and even the other guys in the band maybe don't, and you start to get really, disappointed that the music business is not, picking up on the things that you think you could commercially exploit and build and feel really good about. So, but that's the business, all right. That's the paying of dues and the kicking of your ass, and that's how it works.
So so to be specific, managers or record companies, are you like, they look at you as a vehicle, as a means to an end, and not as, hey man, this guy's a really talented musician? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And they'll drop your contract in a heartbeat if they think, like, an old adage was that record company guys used to just stand there and take up pieces of shit and throw them against the wall. And if they stuck, they'd go, hey, this stuck. Great. Let's spend some money on it.
Yeah.
But, and they don't really care about, and certainly I find this more and more all the time. They don't build careers. They don't say, okay, this is the talent I've got. Now, I mean, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to paint with too broad a brush, because, for example, this young girl, Billie Eilish, that I'm seeing, she's really getting a lot of, she's getting a lot of industry support from somewhere there to build her career. And it's a pretty interesting thing that she's doing. Every time, your old school American Idol R&B singers would do their, big shit, she's whispering. And I go, oh, that's pretty cool. She's onto something. So, and she's mainstream. She's doing the new James Bond movie.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, there is still some of that that's alive, and it's nice to see it. It's just, I wish there was more of it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I could totally get that. I know what you mean with the not thinking, I have this saying, smart people realize how little they know, and stupid people often think they know everything. So from a music standpoint, I could totally understand and very much appreciate your perspective of, man, I have a long way to go. Because there's so much, if you're a student of whatever it is you're doing, you realize, man, there's a ton of information out there. I better not stop studying, because I'll be behind the 8 ball pretty damn quick. So I totally get that, man.
Yep.
What prompted you? I mean, you left to pursue a solo career in '88. I would imagine, like most difficult decisions, you didn't just think about it the day before and then go in that next day and say, guys, I'm done. What was, like, if you are comfortable, the time frame from when it first came into your mind, and what was sort of like I hate to say the straw that broke the camel's back. What was the trigger that finally said, okay, I'm ready?
Oh, it's accumulation of things. I mean, when I even first started in the band, there were peas under the mattress. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
okay. Yeah.
there's never, it was never like the image that we would project to the public was Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. And, that's, party line. That's
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
policy,
Totally.
Yeah, it's a partnership and it was a business. And, so there's a mythology involved in us building an image, but I mean, there were always things where I was going, yeah, I'm not sure I'm an equal partner here, and by the time we'd gone through, geez, it was around 83, 84. The other guys in the band decided they wanted to have a lawsuit against RCA to get out of the contract and move. And then that cost us millions of dollars.
Wow.
To have to, MCA bought the contract with an advance against, our own royalties. We were using our own money, our future money, to buy ourselves out of one deal and move to another label. So we would have needed to.
They bought your contract out, but they didn't buy it. They made a loan to you to buy the contract out.
That is correct.
To be paid back. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're starting out with you're $3 million in the hole in your in your royalty account. So, and we never got back even. And I wasn't really a willing partner in that decision. I got outvoted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are that's just one example. I can give you a dozen. I can give you 2 dozen, but because it accumulates over time, so eventually you get to now, we'd made a record called Sport of Kings in 87. The producer was a guy named Ron Nevison. And that was the thing that kind of drove the wedge. Nevison was a guy that had resurrected Jefferson Starship and Heart. And so MCA brought him in, and it was like, he goes, all right, you guys can't really write your own hits. So I'm going to bring in songs from outside writers. And then in a complete betrayal and subterfuge thing, he pulls me aside after we cut the beds. He goes, now, when these get cut, you got to make sure they get cut in track in keys that you can sing, because the drummer's not going to sing anything. You're going to sing everything. And I went, you will never get that to fly. And then that toilet blew up when and the shit was everywhere. And he quit. Nevison quit the project. Mike Klink finished, and Klink was a good guy. He eventually went on to do Appetite for Destruction for Guns N' Roses. Yeah. So Klink, he was a good engineer and he knew his shit. So he finished that album, but that album was, unhappy. We did a cover for the Canadian Musician magazine at the time, and it was The Record from Hell. And it was the beginning of the end. So we did one more record for MCA, and then I quit.
So you must have just when the pain of not quitting was greater than the pain of tolerating it, that's when whatever that point was, that's when you finally pulled the trigger.
That's exactly it. And there was, there was financial issues, and there were a lot of things that were going on, but the straw that broke the camel's back was, we're making an album and it was an empty house. There was nothing in it for me to keep me there.
Yeah. Not even money.
Sorry?
Not even money, because you had to pay back all this freaking money.
Well, yeah, of course, but I would be walking away from that debt when I quit. So, but MCA still wanted to sign me to my own deal. And I went, I don't want to be with you. Please, new A&R man, go back to your record company and tell them to let me go. That's what I really want. I want a release. Just let me go. So, yeah, but I was becoming and this is 1988. How long did it take before, Nirvana and Soundgarden and
dude, you were 18 months behind destruction. Yeah.
Like the scene was already changing anyways. Who wanted an MTV hairband that, had its hits back in the early 80s?
Yeah.
That I could read the writing on the wall there, so. Anyway.
That being said, I give you a lot of credit, because just to make decisions like that in general and act on them, you gotta, I gotta respect you, man, because it's you know, people have a tough time making decisions. People think all day, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you got to do it, and you did it. So congratulations to you.
Well,
Man. I
thank
think
you,
it took
but
some balls.
you know, again, I'm going to play a humility card here, and I'm going to tell you this.
Well, that's because you're a humble guy. I don't think you're playing
Yeah.
a card. I get it, man. It's totally
I'm going to
cool.
tell you about courage of convictions. All right.
Yeah, tell me, man.
And this is college professor coming out. You know.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
Like, that's a muscle you gotta develop it if you want to be an artist, and you gotta have a courage of convictions. So people that go, ooh, this is what I think, but I'm not going to act on what I think, or this is what I believe, but I'm not going to act on what I believe. Like, it eventually got to the point with me where my muscles in that area had developed enough that I wasn't going to not do it. Not doing it was going to be the thing. Like, it was much more natural and organic for me to follow the courage of my convictions. So I was only doing what comes natural to me, which is a humility card, I know, but I'm just telling you, that's how it works.
Rik, you are so right. Courage and conviction is a muscle you have to develop. And man, and I have talked to my kids about this ad infinitum, because they don't, you know, it's like any other muscle. Once you exercise it, it's stronger. And then it's ready for the next thing. And then it's ready for the next thing. And you are so right. And the opposite is true. Every time you paralyze yourself and don't do that, you set yourself back a peg. And it makes it.
And this is like, it goes to identity and image, self-image, and like identity. So every time you exercise the muscle and it grows stronger, you're being more you.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to be comfortable in their own skin? That's the thing that I don't get. It's like, and I would tell college students, don't you want to be the best you? That's, you know, and stop comparing yourself to me and stop comparing yourself to the kid just be you and be the best you, and that'll be great. And that's pretty superficial, really, in the end. I mean, what does Simon Cowell say to those American Idol kids? Just give me the best you, you know, like it's a cliche, but it's a powerful one.
It's a real powerful one, because man, if you are able to be yourself, your life's going to be pretty okay. You know, you're not going to have too many regrets. You're going to mess up, because we all do, because nobody knows all the answers, but man, you'll be able to sleep at night, man. So it's really good advice. Thank you.
Some nights. Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to, you know, bust your humility thing. You're a great soloist, man. And you're especially good at creating musical climaxes. And you do this often and well enough, sometimes multiple times within a solo even. And it's very deliberate. This isn't random. You're not randomly doing this. And I got to believe that somehow that's tied into your quality of your ability as a writer. Can you just like talk about that? I mean, because you're, I mean.
Ding, ding, ding. I mean, you've answered your own question, really. You know, everything is, to me, is writing. Everything is form. Everything is construction, you know. And as I said, I had a gift at an early age. And like, you know, something would be going on in the classroom and I couldn't help myself. I was going to shoot something out of my mouth that was going to make the whole class just break up, you know. So the whole thing is timing and you know, that you've had that thing happen at the right time, right? So, and good comics have good timing, and writers understand that you're building a story along a certain arc, and then things have to happen along the arc in order for the story to really resonate, right? So that's what it is. It's storytelling, you know, and I felt like I had a kind of a gift for it, an ability. And when you play a guitar solo, it's no different than when you're writing a lyric, than when you're making a speech, than when you're telling a joke. It's timing, and you're going to have to put the right things in the right places. And you know, you got to get your syntax right. I would tell songwriters, you know, don't get your syntax wrong. You know, don't get your wrong syntax-ish. You know, don't scramble it up. There's a way that this flows that then it pays off. and payoffs and hooks in songwriting, you know, in pop songs, you know, like you got to put it in the right place. The jeweler spends a lot of time trying to get that diamond just in the right place with all the little baguettes around it and stuff so that it sets it off, you know, and that's what you're doing. You're just trying to figure out where the diamonds go.
And you were always very
that sound too simple?
No, but you were always very cognizant of that and very deliberate about that in your playing.
Yeah. Now, yeah. Although, you know, I'll just pick a bone with you here. You know, yes, I'm aware of it, and yes, there's a deliberation there. But I can also tell you that there's nothing like when you just shut off and you are out there playing and something happens that's just extraordinary, that you weren't planning it, it just kind of happened. And this is why guys like Charlie Parker end up, you know, doing heroin because they're trying to recapture that moment of, you know, where you've slipped the surly bonds, as it were, you know, and you're flying and you're not even thinking about it. It's just happening. And that's a beautiful thing. And sometimes when you're doing overdubs on an album, that's what you want. You kind of want a moment like that. Now, you might go back and use that moment just to inspire, you know, a more pedantic kind of constructionary approach. I don't know if that's a word, constructionary, but, you know, but there's also times like, you know, you're on stage and you're just improvising. You're just going by the seat of your pants. And, oh, man, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And there's very little. Yes, there's all of this storytelling, you know, structure that's part of who I am. So that's certainly playing a part in the way that this unfolds. Charlie Parker knows how to blow over changes. Like, you know, he knows that in order to do what he's doing. But yeah.
I want to talk about, you have a song called Human Race in Resolution 9. Why is it capital RES for Resolution?
Because the name of the band was Resolution 9, but the album was Res 9. It was a short form. Okay. And we called that because it was Rik Emmett's Solution. So I had a record deal with, oh man, I can't remember their name now. They were out of Europe.
That's great, man. That's classic.
I know. I'm sorry. It slipped my mind. I turned 67 on my next birthday. Don't laugh at me.
Oh, dude, let me tell you, man. I got anybody just listening to the audio. This guy looks great. He could get back. I don't know if he can get back into stretchy pants, but he looks great. He looks like a rock star just today, man. So don't listen to this nonsense.
Anyhow, yeah. So I made this deal, and I was, you know, I put a little band together, and it sort of solved my issue of how I was going to make this happen. I really wanted it to be like an old Blue Note record, except a rock record.
Yeah. That
would just 4 guys in the studio, just, you know, really coming together and having, you know, I'm doing this for the camera's benefit. For those of you that are listening to audio, I'm making my fingers integrate. So RE is Rik Emmett and Solution. So it was RES.
Got it.
Res 9. And we picked the number 9 because my guitar player friend Dave Dunlop, he's crazy about the number 9. He plays a lot of pickup hockey. He wears number 9. You know, he thinks 9 is a magic number. And of course, in the Chinese culture, it is.
I thought 8 was
no,
magic.
9 is the big one.
Oh, 9's a big one. Yeah. See all these cerebral guys, man. I can't keep up. There's a song in Human Race, and I just want to read the lyric because it's really cool. It's sometimes I almost catch the things I chase. That's why I keep on running in the human race. And you were kind enough to send me some backstory notes to that, explaining it. And I thought it was really cool. So maybe you could share it with the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of being an artist, I think, is you're horizon oriented, you know. So even the present moment, which you can sometimes be lost in, and it's fabulous. You've got a sense of flow, and it's really great. but an artist is kind of going, yeah, but what's that up there on the horizon? Well, I gotta go and I gotta see what that is. So that's the thing is like, you're almost catching what you're chasing, but not quite. And even if you did catch it and had it for a little bit, then you wake up the next morning, you go, okay, that was okay. But, so explorer thing, adventurer, I think that's a part of the spirit. And, when I was a kid, I was a runner. I was a sprinter, and I was a good one. I would win school races and school district races. And when I was like maybe 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, when I was 15, playing high school football, guys were starting to be able to catch me. When I was 16, my bones were getting broken. When I was 17, my knee got torn up. So
you played, wait a minute, you're playing like American football, not soccer.
Well, Canadian football is 3-down football, but yes, it's played on a bigger field. It's 55 yards to center field, and the end zones are huge so that you can throw a 30-yard pass from the 2-yard line.
Way into the end zone. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Canadian football is 3 downs. Anyways, but yeah, I loved football. I loved soccer. I loved baseball. I loved sports. I wanted to be a jock. I didn't want to be a musician, when I was younger. But anyways, that whole idea of running, like to know the thrill of, when I was the summer of, am I going to remember the year? I think when I turned 16, I ran a 10 flat 100-yard dash at the police games in Toronto.
10 seconds flat.
10 second flat. Won the race, got my name in the paper, got a trophy, And when I went back to high school that fall, it was like, and they're tearing down my old high school, but there's a board by the gym that has my name on it, Richard Emmett, because I held the school record for the 100-yard dash. And of course, the next year, they changed from yards to meters. So I was guaranteed that no one would ever break that record.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, I loved running. I loved sprinting. So I think that's part of it too. I was playing off the idea of racing.
Yeah. But I think what you said is really true about chasing. And you said, mention it, right? I thought so. You said collectors, guitar collectors. It's collectors of anything. Because I used to collect, like when I was much younger, fountain pens. And then I stopped doing it when I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm waiting for this holy grail fountain pen. And then I sold them all, and I just use them all now. I have 10, and I use all of them because I like to write,
Yes.
And it's the same thing. You're right, man. It's
it says the guy sitting there with 4 electric guitars behind him that anybody would drool a little bit over.
But I don't. I play all of them. I don't collect any of them.
Does your wife say, "Hey, Craig, how many do you need when you're playing?
No,
you only need one." Because that's what my wife says.
No, she's wonderful, man. She's puts up 27 years of, I don't know how. I mean,
well, I'm 44, so.
Yeah, she said to me last week, she goes, I've run a marketing company the last 21 years. She goes, you should really put a product together on sales, because you have bullshit me so well in so many situations. And I've never lied to her once. I don't know what she was talking, because I'm not a liar. So I said, okay. I didn't want to delve into it. I think she just meant persuaded is probably.
Yes. You're a marketer.
Yeah.
Marketing is the art of persuasion.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never lied once, especially to her. Anyway, Rick, what are the top 3 experiences you had musically? Knee-jerk reaction.
Top 3. Wow. I don't know. I mean, I got to play the US Festival in California in 1983. There were 250,000 people there, That was a pretty surreal experience. How many people in their lifetime get to go to a gig in a helicopter?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. 250,000 people. I can't imagine what that's like.
It was insane. And I've said this many times, quotes, but it was such a hot day, and it was mostly white guys, and they all took their shirts off. So it was this pink flesh that went as far as your eye could see.
Yeah,
it was just crazy. Yeah, it was.
Was that the Van Halen was on that festival too?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Ozzy, Scorps, Judas Priest. Yeah, It was quite a day. We
Yeah.
were the band in white. We weren't wearing studs and leather.
You didn't have studs and leather, man.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
Us Festival.
So I would say, you want 3, eh? Okay. How about George Benson getting up and playing with my band at the Buffalo Guitar Festival?
That's
I think
really
that was
cool.
around 2000, 2001 or something. Holy shit, that was like a crazy dream come true that Benson would get up and play with me. But I mean, I've played with Steve Morse, and he's one of the greatest guitar players on the planet. And again, so humble.
I had him on here. You know what? You actually you're like a talkative version of Steve Morse, actually. He's more quiet. Yeah, man. He's a nice guy. He lives here on like north of me a little bit.
Yeah.
What a nice guy, man.
And those still waters run pretty deep, right? So that was a great thing. But I've played with Steve Vai at GIT in about 1985 or 86, somewhere around there, and that was before Vai had just sort of, kind of really established himself. I spent a great day with him. Really sweet.
Another really nice guy. Yeah.
Oh, and an unbelievable guitarist. Just insanely good. I mean, there's nothing like being in the room when your kids are being born. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to make this always be about music. There's been
how many kids?
I think I was pretty lucky when I married Jeanette Ann Bernadette Grew. Like, that was a pretty lucky thing for me. So I've had some pretty good moments in my life. I'm not gonna make them all be musical.
Well, 44 years, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's not easy, man. Honestly, congratulations on that.
Yeah, I know.
Very inspiring. Oh, it's not, man. Come on. Even when you get along great and you genuinely care for the other person and you're compatible, it's not easy, man. Especially like if you're home a lot, it's tough.
Well, and in truth, there were those years where, touring, the two expressions I would use are absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
And familiarity breeds contempt.
Contempt, yeah.
So it's like
it's good to go and good to come home.
It was going, okay, I'm going out for another week and a half. Okay, good. See ya.
Yeah, it's not easy, man. Anybody who and you sound like you have a nice relationship. So if you got to work at that. You have to. It's like anything else, you got to work at it. Give and take.
You bet.
Your childhood. Where did you grow up? Where in Canada?
West End, Toronto.
What was your growing up like? What was your childhood like?
It was pretty good. Like, it was not we didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked his way up in the payroll department at Canadian Pacific Express, but he'd started as a humble clerk and he was a company man. My mom didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom, but she did become a librarian later in her life after her boys had all got to high school. And we couldn't afford a piano. So, musically, the first guitar I got was a borrowed one from my grandfather's sister that was like a 1940 something Stella. It wasn't even a Stella. I don't know what it was, but it had palm trees stenciled on the front, like a Sears catalog kind of,
Yeah.
So that was my first one. And, but my life was good. I think the thing I wrote you, I told you, the whole world changed for everybody my age, the boomers. When the Beatles played Ed Sullivan in '64, it was like, okay, the world has changed. And, of course, I was discovering that I could get my guitar and sit on the front lawn and the girls in the neighborhood would come.
Right.
Hey, hey, there's something going on here, So, yeah, it was a pretty good life.
You wrote, if you're comfortable talking about this, if you're not, it's totally cool. You wrote that shortly after that, the Beatles, your grandfather passed, and you started questioning religion and God. Did you grow up like in the church or?
Yep.
Like, you did?
Yeah. United Church of Canada. My mom was very religious and she sang in the choir. And as soon as I think it was maybe 7 or 8, I probably sang in Christmas pageants, and then I was literally in the choir. I was a first soprano, boy soprano, maybe 8 years old, sang in the school choirs and stuff, but it was because of church choir. exposure. But when I was 11, my grandfather died, and that started me to sort of question all this thing about afterlife and God in heaven and all that stuff. And, slowly but surely it was becoming a rift between me and my mom. And, by the time I was 13, 14, I had become one of those dreaded secular atheist, humanist, I'd say agnostic more than atheist, but, nevertheless.
Yeah. You just got put off church dogma.
But yeah, partly it was religion and dogma. That's part of it. But it's also just, as Hitchens would say, that whole God delusion thing of people that believe that, and I see it as an egotistical thing. They're going to die, but they still get to be themselves in heaven. And you go, I think once your brain's done, you're done. Like, I've had major surgeries where I've had, general anesthetic. And there's no going towards the light. There's no winged people that are coming to, there's none of that. You're gone, And then when you wake up from the anesthetic, you're incredibly nauseous, But that, yeah. So that's, yeah.
That being said, you have a very service-oriented, really, like, your attitude, at least, and again, I'm not that guy to just say shit to blow smoke up people's asses. You have a very service-oriented attitude about you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because I think I always felt part of my, I'm doing quote marks for the camera. Part of my gift, it was that I had to teach. I had to try and help. I had to try and use whatever sort of, thing that I had to try and make life better for other people. So it's a very humanist kind of service. And the other thing, you and I were talking before we got started, and you were talking about stupidity and ignorance. And I feel like we all have a duty to try and keep finding the best about other people. The best of them, and raise the best of them up, find the best of ourselves and lift that up. You can't wallow in that defeatist kind of negativity. That's a bad fight. That's a dirty fight. You want the clean fight. You want the good one. Yeah. So that, I think that's about trying to be a good parent, trying to be a good teacher, trying to be a good teammate, trying to be a good, whatever,
Yeah. What's interesting about all these things you're talking about is, I have found I've made decisions specifically over the last 5 to 10 years that are geared towards reducing my stress. And the ironic thing about all those decisions are, not only do they reduce your stress, they make you a better person for yourself, but for others. How you look at people, how you interact with people. It's funny, the things that, why don't people tell us this when we're young? Do the shit that doesn't bother you, and life is easy, and you'll be more well-liked, and it's easy to deal with people. It's funny, how all that works.
Yeah, but we're sort of cranking a little negative on religion here, but there are certain moralities that come out of religion that are good ones. The golden 100%. Rule is it's in every religion on the face of the earth. And I think in my thing to you I wrote, Dylan said you got to serve somebody. Yeah. And why not serve other people? Right. It doesn't have to be God. Right. Just serve the people in your community. Serve your family. Right. Yeah.
All right. What were some of the low points or darker periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Oh, geez. I've had, my mom died. My both of my brothers have died from cancer. My younger brother in particular, he still comes visit me in dreams. So that's a tough one. My wife she broke her neck in a car accident. She at one point had her colon burst on her. We've been through some crazy things. So, and it's not much fun. One of my daughters played competitive soccer, broke her wrist once, and I had to take her to the emergency, and had to sit in the treatment room while they were putting her arm back in with no anesthetic.
Oh, resetting it. Oh, God.
Oh, that was one of the worst things in my life. You know, that was just, oh, yeah, I could hardly stand that. But,
Yeah.
you know, you survive these things, and then here I am in a little box on the internet.
Is there any advice you'd go back, if you could give yourself advice, anything you would advise yourself, assuming you would have listened, that would have made your life easier?
I don't know. I tend to be, I think, and from my father, I inherited a lot of kind of cynical, stoical, sarcastic, outlooks. And I honestly kind of feel like if I hadn't made the mistakes I made, I wouldn't be where I am. And Ray Bradbury was one of my favorite writers when I was a young teenager. And he had, I can't remember the story, but a short story where, the guys had figured out they could go into the future. And then you're not supposed to step off the floating sidewalk when you're going to hunt dinosaurs, whatever the fucking story was. And, the guy stepped on a butterfly. And so that whole thing about the butterfly effect, it's like, when he came back to his present, he'd changed the course of time, the course of history, just by stepping on a butterfly. So, I kind of feel like I have to make the mistakes in order to sort of figure out who I am, and I've made some bad ones.
Oh man, who hasn't?
Yeah. So, you got to own them, I think. I think that's part of the journey, is that you got to own the bad. So, would I go back? I think I would give myself advice and say, don't sweat it as deep as you do. Don't let it, kill you as much as it's killing you. Like, you'll actually, this is, I think George Harrison had an album, This Too Shall Pass. Like,
all things shall pass.
Again, another cliche. This is what I deal in, is cliches, really.
That's all right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's talk about gear for a few minutes. Tell me, I'm assuming you still practice, knowing you a little bit now.
Yeah, it's not so much practicing as working on repertoire, and writing, developing ideas, and then learning how to play what I'm writing. That's a big one. That's a big ass kicker for me, because I can write above my head, and then I have to get my hands to be able to figure it out, So what was the big question again? The wider question? No,
I was just if you still practice, which you answered.
I mean, not really. And I never was much one for scales and studies. And to me, it was like, why wouldn't you just make music instead of making the things that pretend to be music or that are giving you practice to be music? I go, no, I'm just going right to the music. I'm a little too impatient for all that other stuff.
I'm the same. I agree with you 100%. I want to do stuff that's fun. I got X amount of time here, man. I'm not. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I mean, there are things where, if I'm playing one of my pieces and I bugger it up, I go, okay, better wait, go back, and I play it again and again and again and again, because there's nothing like repetition, and there's nothing like, okay, slow it down until you can get it, you idiot, and then nice and slow, and then work it up. Like, those are, you can play anything if you follow that technique of so that's what I do.
Guitar wise, what's your go-to guitar right now? Has this changed over time? And what other few guitars would round out your top selection?
I've been going through a Telly phase lately. There's a friend of mine, Mike Smith, Smitty, that he's a big Telly guy. And then, so he got me into it. And when he was starting doing the luthier work on my guitars and stuff. And a guy that I really admired, Ed Bickert, passed away a couple of years back. And Ed was a tremendous jazz guitar player who played on an old Telly that was beat up to shit. And I wanted one, and you're never going to get it from his family. Like, he had 2 sons and a daughter, so the guitar is going to stay in the family. So I got MJT Bodies to make me this beat up relic of a body, and I got a neck made, and I had Smitty put together, and I got a sticker for the headstock. Instead of saying Fender, it says Bickert Deluxe.
Oh, that's cool.
And I got it made. There's a place in the States you can get them made online. And so I've got this, old 59 humbucker style telly that I really love. But then I got one. I go, well, I need one with a bridge pickup too. So I got another one that has 2 humbuckers, and I put an old Fender Esquire neck on there that I had. And I've got one of the new white tellies that they make that are light. I think they make them in Mexico. I'm not sure, but really like that guitar. I used it for 5 of the 6 guitar pieces that are part of my new Bonfire stuff. Through a little lunch pail amp, a little Yamaha lunch pail amp, kind of.
That's
It
cool.
was great. It sounded really, really good. So, but I mean, having said all that, I've had a nice relationship with Godin. They make Canadian guitars, like electric acoustics and stuff. And they have one, the top of the line is called a Supreme. And I got 2 of them that they made for me. One of them is kind of my go-to when I'm sitting around watching TV and I'm just going to be plinking and plunking. Godin Supreme is often the one that I go to. And when I play gigs with Dave, I used to, but I've sort of been in semi-retirement, but that's an A6, a Godin A6. So that's a kind of a crossbreed. It kind of looks a little bit like a telly, but it's got an acoustic bridge. It's got a humbucker, but it's got a piezo in there, or a piezo, or however you Floridians pronounce that stuff. Piezo, piezo. Anyhow, yeah, and it's a nice guitar. That's my go-to for live gigs. And then when I did the Triumph reunion, I used my Les Pauls. I got 3 Les Pauls, and when it comes to rock, you really sort of can't beat the Les Paul. And even though I don't use a Marshall, you're really just using Marshall sounds, I got a nice amp, a red plate.
Yeah, out of Arizona, I think. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, a really nice amp, point to point, hand wired. And but I kind of just use it for marshalling up my sound, Yeah.
Are your Les Pauls? They must be boats, like real heavy.
No,
no,
they're all from the 2000s.
Oh,
and they're all chambered, so they're really light. Actually,
Yeah.
Their Les Paul Classics is actually the one that I prefer.
Dude, that's what I have sitting right here. Les Paul Classic. Same thing. It's perfect, man. I only I changed the pickups because the Classics have these heavy, loud,
Yes. Yeah. They have the
498. Yeah. 490 and 498. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked them. They were snotty, but I changed mine out too. Smitty makes pickups. That's his company is MJS Pickups. And he's put all the pickups in all my guitars. So, yeah, that's how it started. He replaced the pickups in my Les Pauls and made them like creamy, smooth, yabba dabba doo, like really nice. And yeah, so, and I got a black one, classic, and I got a Sunburst, like a sort of a T-burst, and I've got one that I had refinished, and I call it Amber, and it kind of looks like it's a flame pop, but it's kind of brown amberish, turns red to the edges.
Very cool. You know what? You mentioned Godin. I should give a shout out. I apologize. Mario Biffarali, awesome guy, and Andy Curran, both those guys wound up connecting us. So, man, I forgot to say at the beginning, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Andy's the guy that hooked us up, right?
Yeah.
I love Andy. He's a great guy. And he's got his finger in a lot of pies, that boy.
He does, man. I don't even know him, actually. Somebody.
Oh,
a buddy?
Andy was a bass player in a band called Coney Hatch.
Oh, okay. That band
back
I've heard
in the
of.
day. Yeah. But he also became A&R man at SRO Anthem for Rush, and so became good friends with Ray Daniels and the guys in the band and stuff. And but he also, when the Rush catalog sold to Robert Ott and his publishing company, and he sort of became a publisher and in tight with those guys. And so, yeah, finger in a lot of pies, but nice guy, good guy.
Yeah, really nice guy.
Musician too.
Really nice guy. What's your favorite song you wrote?
The next one.
You know what? I've heard that. Satriani said the same thing.
Yeah, and that's the Horizon artist thing, But, I mean, I've had some pretty satisfying moments in my life, song-wise. Suitcase Blues on the Just a Game album has kind of been a theme song of mine all my life. Play it as the encore song every night. I think Hold On was a pretty good piece of songwriting when I did that one. And there's been some anthems. Magic Power was a pretty good tune to me. Or there's some evergreen Triumph stuff. So I don't know, but I've just, as I said, released these new Bonfire farewell to the folk songs and farewell Bonfire, and there's like 18 songs that I wrote over the last 5 years, kind of thing. And there's some in there that I'm pretty proud of them. I think I'm getting pretty good at this. This songwriting. I think I'm getting the hang of it.
That's pretty funny, Rick. I'm glad you're feeling so, man. Favorite musicians you've enjoyed playing with? I'm sure there's been dozens of them over the years.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Benson and Vi and Steve Morse. Oh my God, that was a dream come true, kind of playing with him.
You guys even look alike a little bit. You do.
Well, he always had the really long straight hair.
Yeah, but
I was more into the MTV hair production. We need a little product to try and get some size.
But you got the long.
You don't seem to have that problem.
I don't have any hair problems at all, man. I wake up. Gillette is my barber, man.
That's good.
3 times a week. That's it.
I have a little bit of envy for that, Mr. Picard.
Well, let me tell you, man. I'm lucky that I kind of look okay bald. Like I don't know what it has to do. I'm happy with the way I look bald, which is great because I had no choice. So like, I'm really grateful, I would have been screwed if I was unhappy, But it's funny. I had an interview yesterday. I had Paul Jackson Jr. on, and he told me, big LA session guy, he told me George Benson, he played with George. That was one of his top 3 as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Benson is, first of all, he's a lovely guy. Benson is a cool guy. But he's also like a monster in the sense of what he can do and how, and like he can just fly. Like he's like the Charlie Parker of guitar, kind of, in a way, notes wise and choice wise and stuff. Like he can just fly, And so to be on stage with him, he's just cutting you so bad. Like he's cutting your grass so bad, but you don't care. You're just up there going, yeah, give me more of that, George.
Yeah.
That's all right. Like that's just so great. And he's having such a fun time doing it. Like he's going, I am going to bury you so deep. Just watch this. Like it's great. And he's laughing the whole time,
That's cool.
Yeah. Good.
So Benson, Morse, Vi, anybody else?
Well, I mean, musician, like I love playing with Dave Dunlop. I've been lucky that I've had him in my life. I played with a drummer named Randy Cook, and your listeners should maybe track him down online. Randy is now sort of, I think his handle was on, like his email address was like drumwhore@mac.com. He's played with like Five for Fighting and, I saw him one night on I think it was Jay Leno, and he was playing with he was on one of the others, and he was playing with Ringo Starr and Ringo Starr's All Stars. So he's playing with Ringo. A week later, I see him on another talk show, and he's playing with Miley Cyrus's dad, Billy Ray Cyrus.
Wow.
So I'm going, he just goes out on tours. He plays albums. And Randy is an unbelievably great drummer, a white kid who cut his teeth in black bands when he was little. So plays funk and R&B like nobody's business, but became a rock drummer, long-haired MTV kind of era guy. And now he lives in LA and he plays on sessions. Randy was one of the guys that really, when I left Triumph and he came into my band, he made me become a much better musician just by proximity. There's that old saying, always be the worst musician in the room.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You'll get better. Like Randy was a guy that made me realize my time was not very good. And Randy was like a human metronome, So Yeah, I became a much better musician by playing with him. So big shout out to Cookie.
Randy Cook. Is he a Canadian guy or an American guy?
He was a Canadian guy, but he's now living in LA.
You know, I know somebody has mentioned him to me because it's not the first time I've heard his name. Randy Cook. I will check him out for sure.
Yeah. Tremendous drummer. Great drummer. Doesn't like jazz. So he doesn't play a lot of jazz, but everything else he can play the shit out of.
That's nice, man. It's good to play with people like that, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
Knee-jerk reaction, top 3 Desert Island discs, just for right now.
Yeah. Steely Dan Asia. I would. Can I pick a greatest hits? Maybe a James Taylor greatest hits.
Man, you can for you, Rick. You could pick a box set even.
Okay, then I'm gonna have something by Matheny, and I really like the Matheny era where it was Matheny Group, and he did like "We Live Here" and First Circle was a pretty big record for me too. I really loved that. So I'd have to have something from Matheny. And maybe JT by James Taylor. That's one. But how could I? When
that's interesting. I wasn't expecting you to say James Taylor. That's interesting.
Oh, I love James Taylor. One of the best concerts I ever saw. James Taylor concerts. But you're talking to a closet folkie here, buddy. Like
yeah.
I played coffee houses when I was a teenager as much as I played rock band gigs. On a nylon string guitar, playing, Roy Clark's Malaguena, a James Taylor song, a Paul Simon tune. That was me when I was
Malaguena.
15.
What a great.
Yeah.
To watch Roy do that. My God.
Yeah, I lifted that one. Wait, I was on to something there.
About you
before we got on the
JT. I'm sorry, you were on.
Oh, it was all right.
Now I'm Canadian because I'm apologizing. See, you're contagious here.
Yeah. I was going to tell you a story about
yes.
Desert Island discs.
Yes.
So on my honeymoon, well, my wife and I had lived together a year before we got married. So, but when we went to this place, we rented a house up in Barry's Bay, Ontario. And on the stereo, we would put the Benson Masquerade album, but it was one of those old stereos where you could lift the arm and lift it up and put it sideways. So the record would just play over and over and over, and you can imagine what my wife and I were doing. But that record would play over and over and over.
Planning your future.
That was one of the reasons. When Benson got up to play with me in Buffalo, it was because I had sent a note through the promoter, and I knew the promoter of that festival was a guy that, like you said something about Santana and something when we first starting here. He wanted to get Santana and Clapton and somebody else together on stage. That was his dream of life, And so I knew he liked the idea of collaboration. So I sent a note through the promoter to Benson that said, your music was the music soundtrack of my honeymoon. If you want to come and jam, get up in the encore, because his set started at 8:00 and his show was at the big theater. I was playing a club up the street, and I didn't go until like 11:30, so he could easily make my last. So he came. The promoter apparently stapled the note to the paycheck so that his road manager had to bring him this note that said,
that's awesome.
And so he came with big bodyguards. He came to the club and he got up and he played. So yeah, soundtrack of my life. So
that's very cool.
The Masquerade album's got to be in there somewhere.
Masquerade, yes, man. Tell me, best decision that you've made. It's probably gonna be marrying your wife. I guess you said that earlier, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably this next best decision that I ever made was that I would give up trying to be a jock and commit myself to becoming a musician.
You're in pretty good shape. I mean, you seem like you're in pretty good shape. You must still do some exercise or work out, right?
A little, but not a lot lately. My wife has just had one of her hips replaced, so the last couple of weeks has been pretty much just, cooking dinners and walking dogs, and I've been doing loads of laundry.
Nice. Hey, man, for better or worse, right?
Yeah, that's it. Sure. But you don't have to work out when you're getting enough housework in.
Tough question, Rick. What do you like most about yourself?
I like it when I'm having a sense of humor as opposed to when I'm, getting angry.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a side of me that I like more than other parts of me, you know.
I think everybody could say, I would think everybody could say that, right?
Yeah. I think for me, I like the fact that in the end, my creativity comes to my rescue. How's that? That's fairly artistic.
That is very artistic, Rick. That might be your quote.
Yeah.
That might be, I put a quote at the top of everybody's thing. That might be, no, that's not, I have your quote actually. You said it earlier. It was really good. You said, courage and convictions, that's a muscle you have to develop. That was right up. That was good, man.
Thanks. You can quote me when you do your book.
Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
Oh man, right now, currently, it's when the grandkids visit or we go see them. Like that's a really sweet joy to have in life. But birth of my kids, marriage to my wife. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Triumph just got to do the Walk of Fame induction thing back in November. That was pretty cool. Like pretty nice to be celebrated for a lifetime achievement kind of a thing. And here's a story. You'll love this story. My dad worked for Canadian Pacific Express, and the building used to sit at the corner of King and Simcoe in Toronto. And he would go there.
Simcoe High School? Was that very same?
No. There was a guy that was one of the early settlers in Canada, and it was Lord Simcoe, and so a lot of shit is named after him.
I thought for a moment I was Canadian.
Yeah, okay. So it's King and Simcoe Street. And that building got torn down and they built the concert hall. Roy Thompson Hall is there now. But that's where they do the sidewalk for the Walk of Fame. They do the chunks of sidewalk, King and Simcoe. So my name is going to be in a chunk of sidewalk where my dad went to work for 40 years.
That's cool, man.
Where he walked every day at lunch,
That's nice. Yeah, that's good, man.
Yeah, it's a kind of a cool thing.
What's the most important thing your dad taught you?
I think my dad taught me to be realistic and practical, and those things I mentioned earlier, stoicism and a little bit of cynicism, and I don't think you can survive in business if you're not suspicious about, you can't just be gung ho about everything. You have to sort of be very practical. And I would often be in Triumph the guy that would be going, "Whoa, wait a sec. Let's look at this from a different perspective." And they would go, "Oh, Rick, you're being so negative." And I'm going, "I'm not being negative. I'm being practical. I'm being realistic." So I think
you got to question everything. I think.
Yeah, to a certain point. I mean, there's times where you gotta let yourself go and just take it for what it's worth and allow yourself that. But generally speaking, the big decisions you do have to try. Yeah.
For sure, man. How about your mom? Most important thing she taught you?
Oh, the artistic creative thing was my mom, singing in the choir and stuff. And my mom would be washing the dishes and singing, and she would teach me songs. There's the bower of roses by Glendamere stream, and the nightingale sings by it all the day long. Yeah, like those kinds of things. And those are two-parters. Like she would sing harmony.
Oh, that's good. Your voice was really great, man. I'm saying was because I haven't heard you sing now, but you
just did.
You know what I mean? But it was really a joy to listen. I mean, it was perfect for that music that you were playing, man. It was really on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really.
That's the big part of the natural gift that I had, was that I had this voice that I could, and I could sing high. I could sing higher than anybody else.
Yeah.
In grade 8, they moved me from the first sopranos over to the tenors. just because they didn't want a boy on that side of the stage anymore. You know?
Yeah.
I could still sing those notes. You know?
That's. Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
Well, I used to be a cartoonist. I haven't really done much of that lately. But I mean, I still love writing. I write emails. I write poetry. I write posts on the sort of the forum on my members site on my website every day.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you know who talks to his members
questions.
a lot?
Sorry?
A guy who talks to his members a lot. Another Canadian guy. I'm sure you know Frank Marino.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always interacting with it, like all the time. Same thing.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Nice guy.
I saw him play once. Frank was on the bill. We played the Heavy Metal Holocaust in England, Stoke-on-Trent, England, and it was the headliners were Ozzy and Motorhead.
Wow.
And Frank's set, he was unbelievable. He must have had 30 pedals on the floor in front of him, and he was mind-bogglingly good. Very Hendrix, obviously, but yeah.
He's touring now.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's got a pretty nice.
I'm retired. I don't do that shit.
You know, he's touring now. Yeah.
Yeah. Ask me what my least favorite thing was, and it was like I hated traveling, man. Oh,
it's a tough life, man. It's a very tough life.
I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't.
Knowing what I'm not going to call you a homebody because I don't know you well enough to call you a homebody, but knowing what how happy you are in your relationship, that had to be really difficult to do, man. I mean, I couldn't do it, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, after a lifetime of it, now it's become hard. Like I stopped playing gigs January of last year. So it's been over a year, and I'm just kind of settling into it now because you're addicted to the whole idea of instant gratification and audiences telling you how lovely you are and how great you are. And then just that whole thing of performance, the moment of performance, you're addicted to that you gear yourself up and you do this thing, again, that's the jock thing in me. That it was like that moment of performance there's something beautiful about that. So you miss that, but I don't miss the traveling. I don't miss the airports and the in and out of hotels and in and out of cabs and limos and thank you very much. No, thank you.
Yeah, man. I totally get that. Hey, 2 more questions.
Good.
Toughest decision.
Because it's only been 2 hours.
Toughest decision you had to make or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Well, to quit the band Act 3, I had a friend in there named Denton Young. In order to accept the Triumph offer, that was pretty hard. That was a hard thing to do. I cried a few nights on that one. And then, of course, quitting Triumph. There's no doubt that was one of the hardest things I've had to do in my life. I carried that one around for years. I didn't talk to those guys for 20 years before we had a reunion. That's how ugly and bitter that one ended. And not anymore. We fixed it.
That's
and
great.
When my brother was dying of cancer, my younger brother, he sort of said to me, you gotta clean things up, And I said, no, you do. And he goes, no, you do too. Like everybody's got to do this. I went, okay, all right. I'll reach out. I'll see if I can't make it happen.
Good for you, man.
Well,
probably felt
good for my brother. Good for the other 2 guys for, also wanting to make it happen.
That's
and
nice,
we did.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good story in the end. We got to go into the Hall of Fame and everything.
That's nice, man. Good that it ends like that. Last question, Rick. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional? How much is just a natural part of aging?
Yeah, whoa, that shotgun was double-barreled. Wow.
You have great one-liners, man. You need to put them.
I've been in show business all my life, Craig.
Yeah, but you need to
maybe you haven't noticed
little clips of this, like, well, that shotgun's double-barreled, followed by the next one. You need to put a whole ream of them together.
Yeah.
In a video.
Well, again, this is the class clown. Okay, so let me see. I would say that I've been, mellowing and learning to accept my aging which I was not comfortable with it when, my 60s have been harder than my 50s, but now that I'm in the back end of them, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting the hang of it. Like I'm coming to terms with the sore knees and the sore hips and the sore back and the sore neck. And like you go, okay, well, this is, you gotta, this becomes part of that humility thing that we've talked about as a leitmotif here in our conversation, because I've had a sweet ride. So you got to be sort of grateful for that. And if I could go back and change, like, you'd asked me earlier, if I could go back and tell my high school football playing self, no, don't do this. You're gonna end up paying a big price for this later in your life with arthritis. I once had a nurse that was doing x-rays that said to me, if you could go back, you wouldn't change. It wouldn't change. You'd do it again. And I went, you're probably right. I probably would. I would make the same mistakes, So I think I'm coming to terms with that I would make the same mistakes. And that's what made me so, I'm becoming accepting of that, not fast enough for my wife's happiness, I think, but I think it's happening. Yeah.
Good,
so,
man.
Yeah. And what was the other barrel? There was two
No,
barrels.
it was that was it, man. It was really one. It was biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much is
intentionality. Yeah, intentionality. Yeah, I think intentionality is sort of that's not a word. Intent would be the word.
Intent. But you're the first person. I want to congratulate you because no one else has said leitmotif and almost 700 shows. So, I mean, Rik, this is like we're having breakthroughs all day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's Richard Wagner for you. Leitmotif right there.
Oh, you're just very well read. You could tell that. That's why.
Thank you. Yes, sir, I am. You don't get to teach college without being well read.
Yeah, you'd hope anyway.
You better do your research or else they're going to cook you, those kids.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so intent. Yeah. I think like the whole idea of conscientiousness versus just a kind of an unconscious, zeitgeist, the flowing through of life. And, there's a balance that you try to strike there. So, there are things that you have to be intentional about, but then there's other things where you have to sort of go, I don't know, how much of these choices that I'm making are actually organic ones? They're the natural things that I'm choosing. And we talked about this earlier, where I sort of said, well, here was this gift and it would lead me to make these kinds of choices, but then I was exercising that muscle. That was me learning how to, and what did we call it? I can't remember what we called it.
As far as exercising the muscle, it was courage and conviction is a muscle.
Yeah, so courage and convictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so courage and convictions is like, if you had a conviction, is that not a natural thing? It is. So your inclination is towards your conviction, but now the courage part, well, that becomes a little bit more, you got to be conscientious about this. You actually have to, screw your courage to the sticking place, as Shakespeare would say, and you have to go for that. And so again, it's this balancing of these two kind of yin yang thingies, and trying to make it happen. So that's one of the secrets of life, by the way, is balance.
Is balance? Yeah, I'm
everybody's
working
trying
on
to
that.
seek it. You're trying to find it. I think I'm getting better at it, but it's an ongoing process, isn't it?
God, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
For me, it
because
certainly is, man.
My inner ear is not as good as it used to be. So I'm working on my balance. Yeah. Okay,
Rik,
so there you go.
Man, first of all, thank you very much. This is really a pleasure. It's so cool. Like, the fanboy in me really enjoys when I get to chat with somebody that I mean, I've listened to your music over and over. You're part of the fabric of my childhood, man. And for that, I want to thank you because you put out a hell of a ton of good music.
Thank
And
you
it's
so
a real
much.
joy for me to sit and talk and get to know you behind that. So thank you
Okay.
very much on a personal
You're
level, and
welcome.
really cool to talk to you. Let me tell people what you got going on. I would love everybody to go to Rik Emmett, and it's Rik, R-I-K, Emmett, EMMETT.com. He's got a new, it's a pretty extensive, he's calling it bonfire sessions, but it's folk songs for the farewell bonfire. He mentioned it. 24 pieces, I think. Well, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. There's I did it in 6 packs. So the first one's come out, and I'm doing 3 sets of 6 songs each. So there's 18, and they're literally sort of Springsteen, Nebraska-esque. Like one of the first albums I ever got was Bob Dylan, 1962. It was called Bob Dylan, and it's just him and his guitar. So I went, you know what? I'm going to come full circle. This is what I'm going to do for downloads. I'm going to do just me and one guitar. So there are 3 songs that are with an electric guitar, a Tele, but the other ones are just me and a Yamaha L55 6-string that I've had for a couple of decades, and maybe 3 decades. And then there's going to be 6 fingerstyle jazz guitar pieces at the end. So they'll come out in these 6-packs. We have to get them mixed. So we finished the first group. My engineer guy is working on the second. And yeah, they'll come out over the next month or so, I would think. A couple of months, who knows. But
you have an
yeah,
email
so
list?
eventually there'll be 24 pieces of music all told.
And do you have an email list? Like if people can sign up on your email, you'll notify them when it comes out, or is all your forum? Or
Yeah, well, we got the Facebook and the Twitter and all that, and we do those kinds of things.
Okay.
But if you want to get onto my forum on my site, you actually have to. I charge people for that.
Oh no, that's cool.
That's because I go there every day and
Dude,
I answer questions and
that's awesome.
I blog there. Yeah, so that I think
you.
it's $35 a year or something like that. But once those people are on there, they can literally, it's like they send me an email and I answer it.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, so that's where the songs are. The only place you can get them is downloading them off the site, but you don't have to be a member to do that. But
you can buy them on the site.
Yeah, and I think there's probably something there where you can sign up to be on an email list or something on the site. I don't really pay attention to that because I have other people do it for me. So.
No, I hear. So this is the deal. If you're interested and you want to, hey man, you want to connect with Rik and ask him more deep questions of life and solve the problems of the world together, as we have done for 2 hours, go join his forum, because it sounds like it's a really inexpensive deal to get to hang out with Rik. If you want to just let me just tell you, in all seriousness, he's a hell of his jazz playing and his acoustic stuff is really phenomenal. It's well worth it. So go, get at least the first 6-pack that's ready of this bonfire sessions, and follow him on Facebook and Twitter, and anything else I'm leaving out. I feel like I need to sell something here for you.
No, you've done a fine job, Mr. Garber. Thank you.
All right. Let me wrap this up, man. Thank you sincerely very much. Thank you, man. Really nice. I appreciate you being so straightforward and so open. And you're a very, I'm going to just say this again. You're a very nice guy. You've been so kind to me. You were very, I only learned in the last 10 years the difference between kindness and weakness. And I'm very much attracted to kindness, because it's one of those things, like I was telling you about, man, stop being an asshole. You stop being so stressful. Life is easier. And then you start meeting other people that are nice too. And isn't that amazing? And you're one of those guys. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. I don't take stuff like that for granted.
It was my pleasure.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels with your buddies. Go to RikEmmett.com. Again, it's RikEmmett.com. Check out all the cool new stuff he's got going on there. Follow him or find him on Facebook and Twitter. Download the bonfire sessions, or at least the first 6-pack. He's going to have a bunch of them. Sign up to his forum. Ask him the meaning of life, and he will tell you, I promise. Most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Don't forget that. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Rik, thank you for everything, brother.
You're welcome.